How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
I guess it's time to talk about the show that's not...
Oh, do we have a show to do?
I mean, technically, what we're talking about right now is...
premium content.
It is Jim Henson adjacent.
That's true.
Because he was involved in the first Turtle movie.
Yeah, he was.
He passed away between the first and second one, and the second one is dedicated to him.
Oh.
Yeah.
It always hurts.
Let's start this show off on a good sad note. Yeah.
Big shocker that I cried during the song Saying Goodbye.
Oh, it's a sad song.
Oh no, here he goes.
But then like today after we ate breakfast, I put it on the TV while I came in here and started working on the notes, and it's just in the background. Like I'm not watching it, but it's just there, and the song starts and I'm like, motherfucker, I'm going to start crying again. Ugh. Fuck.
Oh god, Todd's starting already.
I know.
We haven't even said well hello yet, and Todd's already
he's already cursing at himself for crying at this.
For his emotions. Curse these emotions. All right, we ready to start for real?
Expect more tears from Todd this time.
You're likely to get them.
Wow.
No more tears. It's a waste of such good suffering.
Oh yeah,
Something like
I remember that Muppets Hellraiser crossover.
The worst part is that it actually sounds a little appealing to me, like just Pinhead having to deal with the Muppets, and then like Gonzo is just like, oh God, give me some of those chains, like begging for it.
It's like, what was it? I think it was an episode of the Muppet Show I was watching where. Was it the Muppet Show or was it one of the movies? I think it was the Muppet Show where one of them was, well, it's kind of like in this movie when Kermit is getting adjusted after his amnesia and like because he's made of felt, when they move his arms up and twist them around and all that. It's like Pinhead wouldn't be able to do anything to hurt the Muppets if he tried to torture them. They're very pliable.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, in my mind, it's one of those Tex Avery cartoons where like the wolf is trying to get rid of Droopy. Except it's Pinhead trying to torture Gonzo. And it's just everything that he does. Like Pinhead finally stands up and is like, whew. But then like Gonzo's just standing right next to him.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, what next?
Gonzo gets off on pain.
Yeah, he does.
That's his kink.
That's our next t-shirt.
It'll just say pain is my kink and a picture of Gonzo.
Gonzo the Great.
Oh, man.
All right. Anyway, let's really start the show.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to Cinema Shock. It's the podcast exploring the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films, both of them. We do all the research so that you don't have to. This is the last podcast you'll ever need about the Muppets Take Manhattan. And I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
And I'm your other host, Justin Bishop.
And I'm writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. We're the weirdos at Table 4. Thank you for joining us for part 7 of our series we've titled Heartfelt, The Legacy of Jim Henson.
7 episodes in. It's funny.
Yeah.
I was looking at the upcoming, because we still got a couple more. And I was looking at the number of episodes a couple days ago, and I was like, wow. Like, we had originally planned Jim Henson to...
Oh, this will be quick.
It's going to be like a quick, 5-episode series.
Yeah.
4 or 5 episodes, whatever. And it is turning into... It will, by the end, be our second longest series we've ever done.
Next to Jim Cameron?
No, George Romero and Tom Savini, our very first series was 10 episodes long. This one's going to be like 8, maybe 9, actually. This might be 9 episodes.
Yeah, at least 9.
Yeah, but it's been fun.
It has.
Before we move on, though, before we get going on this, none of us made it together again joke. Shit.
How did we miss out on that?
All right, everybody back to 1.
Redo.
From the top.
Look at me, here I am, right where I belong.
How did we miss that one? I'm ashamed.
God.
I'm disappointed in us.
Yeah, me too. I'm right there with
disappointed
you.
in us. Wow, we should quit the podcast game
Mm-hmm.
if we can't do better than that.
Yep.
Anyway, before we move on, before we get really started on this episode, we just want to mention, as we always do, Cinema Shock Plus. First of all, thank you to all of our subscribers who are already members of Cinema Shock Plus. If you are new to the show, if for some reason you found us by searching for the Muppets Take Manhattan on your podcast app, who knows? Well, welcome for one thing. But Cinema Shock Plus is a subscriber service that we offer where we have extended versions of every episode. Those extended episodes have all kinds of special features and bonus content, all kinds of other stuff that we do that you won't get on the regular feed. And we also put those episodes out 2 days early. We also have video content. If you ever want to see like the raw, uncut video of these recording sessions of us, you can. It's kind of like for super fans, but you know, we've got a few people out there who care about that, which is kind of cool. And people who just want to support the show by throwing a little bit of money our way because they know how much work goes into it. And we very, very much appreciate it. So if you want to join Cinema Shock Plus, head to cinemashock.net/plus, and you can join there for, I think it starts at $3 a month, but the cool shit starts at like $5 a month. And you can also get merchandise discounts. You can get access to our Twin Peaks watch along series, which season 2 will be coming out here in the somewhat near future. And yeah, that's what I got. What do you guys got anything to say about Cinema Shock Plus?
Just a heartfelt thank you to everybody who subscribes and likes us enough to throw a couple bucks our way. And yeah, bless you. Thank you.
We don't like being sincere, but sincerely, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. No, it really is a big deal. You keep us motivated. Thank you.
You do. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So after the release of The Dark Crystal, Jim Henson found himself in a kind of interesting place. For the first time in more than a decade, he wasn't actively working on multiple projects at the same time. Don't get me wrong. It's not as if he was just sitting around on his ass at home watching TV. This is Jim Henson we're talking about. He was still doing Sesame Street. He was still doing Fraggle Rock. He wasn't on Fraggle Rock every day, but he would pop in now and then. And there is a character on Fraggle Rock that he plays, but he's not on every episode. Huh. Yeah, it's this. I can't remember the character's name. He's like this very like philosopher type. He's like one of the taller Fraggles.
Oh, okay.
But if you look him up, it's very clear that it's Jim Henson playing him, but it was just sort of a guest star now and then. But at this point in time, briefly, he no longer had a weekly TV show that he was involved in on a day-to-day basis, and he didn't have any movie projects in active development for once.
Which 2 TV shows in production is usually busier than any of us could ever hope to survive. And
right.
And that was light for Jim Henson.
Well, yeah, and because he didn't have to be there every day for them, though. He wasn't. It wasn't like the Muppet Show where he was like day and night, like that's what he was doing for 6 months out of the year. Right. He was doing the Muppet Show. On Fraggle Rock, he had his producers who were running the show, and he trusted them to do it. And obviously, he would give input as needed. Same with Sesame Street. He wasn't running the show over there. He was obviously a huge part of it, but he wasn't like the main showrunner. That was still John Stone at this point.
Right.
But like I said, this is Jim Henson we're talking about, and we know that this guy likes to stay busy. And he's always got a lot of ideas. He's always got things that he wants to do. There's always that next big thing for him to start working on. So he did go on a little bit of vacation for a few weeks. I think he went skiing in Europe, and he maybe I think went on a short cruise. He did a little bit of vacationing for a few weeks. But by the summer of 1983, he had not one but 2 new projects that he was working on. So once he got back into it, he was like, you know what? I don't know which one I want to do, so let's just start on both of these. One of those 2 projects would reunite him with his Dark Crystal collaborator, Brian Froud. The other was a 3rd movie in the Muppet franchise, tentatively and uncreatively titled The Muppet Movie 3. But by the time it was released in theaters, it would be known, of course, as The Muppets Take Manhattan.
New York, Times Square, Broadway, all the lights, all the spectacle, all the excitement. Thousands come every day dreaming of one thing, to make it to the top. Out of these thousands, one has a very special dream. And he's got something unique, something ordinary people don't have. And together with his friends, he's gonna take this town by storm.
Taxi! Taxi!
Creep! The Muppets Take Manhattan. Coming soon from TriStar.
I tell you what is. Big podcast. Live, work, but not podcast only. Only spoilers. Spoilers is spoilers. No, his buildings, his tomatoes. His spoilers is dancing, his music is potatoes. So, spoilers is spoilers. Okay?
I love that.
I did too, but also like it does not work as an actual spoiler warning. It just has the word spoilers over and over. For anyone who like this is their first time listening to the show, they're going to be like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" That was Todd's attempt to tell you that we will be spoiling this movie. If you have not seen it, we will be talking about it in detail. Not that there's really a lot to spoil about this movie plot-wise, but if you're new to the show, we always talk about the movie assuming that you've seen it because we're going to spoil shit.
I knew before he even did it that is what Todd was going to use for the spoiler warning.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Because we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now.
To be fair, a spoiler alert that doesn't really make sense, totally on brand for me.
That's true.
Yeah, very
I
true.
will also say something beautiful about this that could put you in your feels is in the commentary for this movie I was watching with Frank Oz. He does tell the story that speech is written as a tribute to his father. That's a speech his father would give. His
To
father
Frank
was
Oz's
Dutch.
father?
Yeah, Frank Oz's father, that he was Dutch and he spoke in very broken English. And so he would give advice. If you were outside looking in, it would sound ridiculous. Like it doesn't make any sense. I have no idea what you're saying.
Much like Todd's spoiler alert.
Yeah, but if you're the person he's talking to, like Frank Oz is getting the advice from you, it says somehow you just know what he's telling you.
Gary's trying to get me to cry sooner than I normally would. That's what this is driving at here.
Well, as development began on the new Muppet movie, Jim looked at his schedule for the upcoming year and realized that he was already going to be very, very busy. And for Jim Henson to look at his schedule and go like, wow, this is a lot, guys. Like there must have been a lot on his planner. But between Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and this new project with Froud, which, let's be honest, he was more passionate about doing than another outing with the Muppets, he had a lot on his plate. So for the next Muppet movie, he cut his role down significantly. This time around, he would serve as an executive producer on the film, in addition to being a performer, of course. But he turned directing duties over to his right-hand man, Frank Oz, who'd cut his teeth as a co-director on The Dark Crystal. Oz would later say, "I think Jim felt at this point he could trust me not to fuck it up." Which is great. And very Frank Oz. I love Frank Oz. I love reading interviews with him because I love that he curses a lot. Being a guy that got started as, Miss Piggy and Fozzie Bear. And he does kind of have a potty mouth, which is endearing to me.
And to think about when he and Jim would do a puppet that required 2 live hands, wasn't Frank usually the right hand?
The right hand, yeah. Well, I mean, he probably did right hand. He probably was a right-hander, but Frank got started so early that he probably had a lot of like puppets of his own. But like Richard Hunt and guys like that, like that's what they called them, or that's what they called it. They call it right-handing, or I was a right-hander. Like a lot of Muppeteers got their start as a right-hander because Jim would be using, or Oz or whoever would be using their right hand usually for the mouth and their left hand for one of the hands.
Okay,
and then somebody else would have to do the right hand. Yeah,
fun.
Yeah, pretty cool. So Jay Tarsis and Tom Patchett, the writing team who had scripted The Great Muppet Caper for Henson, were brought on to write this new film. And when they turned in the first draft of their script, titled The Muppets, The Legend Continues, which not a bad title. It's all right. It's okay. Oz felt that this draft was way too over-jokey, relying too much on gags and one-liners.
Feels a little bit like you're saying, this water is too wet.
Yeah, right? It's a Muppet movie.
Well, just that little piece of information made me think of Veterinarian's Hospital on the Muppet Show, and I was just like, yeah, I'd watch 90 minutes of that. That's hysterical.
Nothing but gags and one-liners. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the Muppets do.
And get a couple of celebrity cameos to come in and go like, they're crazy, and then just leave.
Yeah. That's what we expect from the Muppets. Jokey and silly, and that's what it's there for.
Yeah.
So while the main beats of the plot were in place in this draft, Oz felt that it lacked what he called the oomph of the characters and their relationship, something that he saw as the heart of their appeal. So he asked Jim if he could tinker with the script himself. And with Jim's encouragement, he wrote his own draft, tightening up the narrative and pushing for a more realistic depiction of the characters and their relationships. Although Oz later admitted that he may have overcorrected a bit, robbing longtime Muppet fans of the zaniness that they'd come to expect from the troupe.
Because when you have a talking frog and a diva pig, realism should be paramount at all times.
I think it was more about the realistic like depiction of like how they interact with each other. Like these are real characters who are interacting with each other, and as opposed to realism as in they exist in the actual world.
I mean, I thought they did, so it doesn't
You
matter
did,
to me,
yeah.
but,
Well, yeah.
I was just kidding because in the commentary he does reflect on a few different times. It seems like he's at peace with it at that point. He just said at that time he wanted more heart and depth with the characters. He says like in there that he knows not everybody's gonna like that some people expect like the gags, but that's okay. This is the part that he liked and he wanted to really build on it.
Well, and that was probably in response to The Great Muppet Caper, which is more gag heavy than character heavy. Whereas the Muppet movie, the first one, I think is a really good balance of the two. I think the Muppet movie has a lot of heart and a lot of silly gags like the fork in the road and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the Muppet Caper lost some of that, of the character-based stuff, and relied fully on just being a silly romp, which is, fine. But maybe he was trying to find that and like I said, overcorrected a little bit and didn't find that middle ground as much.
I mean, right off the bat, there's a different vibe of the way that they're portrayed in the Muppet. I mean, and this is from more of a analyzing the narrative as it's presented. There's definitely a different vibe because you go from like Kermit being being discovered in a swamp to basically going and getting the rich and famous contract in Hollywood. And then he's presented as this reporter who goes to London and everything. And then with this one, it's like we scale back to the Muppets graduating from college.
Well, I mean, I think we even talked about it last time that the Muppet Caper was not like a further adventure of the Muppets as if the Muppets were real, but it was a movie that the Muppets made.
Exactly.
Which you could say the same thing about this one, though, really, if you wanted to. But it's not like there's any continuity with the Muppets.
Right. It's definitely headcanon stuff, but like in looking at it through that lens, it was just kind of like, okay, did they get out of Hollywood and go back to school? Or is this the second movie that they're making under the rich and famous contract? Like, I mean, because it is so standalone, it doesn't fit into any one of those particular narratives seamlessly. So it's kind of, it's a weird vibe. It is a weird vibe for him.
I would still stick with it. The truth is we made that canon up. Like you said, head canon up in the last movie. In no movie, in every single Muppet movie, it's as though the others don't exist and these characters are not the same character. They are the same characters, but they're not the same ones that experience those other things.
I would say the only exception is the 2011 Jason Segel Muppet movie, which does acknowledge.
Oh, very much.
Oh, I mean, it takes place in the Muppet Theater from the Muppet Show.
Yeah,
like that's the whole. That's the whole plot.
They mentioned the wedding. They mentioned the road trip from the first movie. Like it's definitely tying them all together.
Yeah.
Maybe all of them are movies that they made.
Yeah. I mean, Muppet Treasure Island is definitely not like in continuity with the Great Muppet Caper.
Manhattan Melodies is a show within a show.
It's a show within a show, and doing a Broadway thing. Remember, Jim always wanted to do a Broadway show.
Yeah.
I was watching this one this time, thinking to myself, I wonder if he secretly hoped this might become one.
I think this was his way of getting it out of his system, maybe a little bit.
Maybe.
Like, it's not quite the same thing as doing an actual live show, because part of the appeal of doing the Broadway thing is being able to pull off things in front of a live audience and playing off of that. Obviously, you're not getting that here, but maybe it scratched that itch a little bit,
Yeah.
with him. I don't know. That's just me. That's just total speculation. But anyway, as the script on this was refined, the crew at the Muppet Workshop in New York began working on dozens of new Muppets for the movie, including a roller skating Miss Piggy, a water skiing Gonzo, and radio-controlled versions of nearly every major character in the movie.
Nothing says character death like strapping a pig into wheeled footwear and shoving that chicken fucking weirdo into a water-based death trap. At this point, Gonzo, his whole vibe is just to yeet himself into things.
That was his whole vibe on the show, on the Muppet Show.
Gonzo is a felt Florida man.
He's like a Florida man after like a couple 6-packs of beer, and he's like, "Hey, watch what I can do."
Yep.
Exactly.
So these radio-controlled Muppets were a pretty key innovation. Now, as we know, they had been used on the Great Muppet Caper a little bit, but Muppet builders had continued to improve the tech, making their inner workings smaller and smaller, and these radio-controlled Muppets were performed with a device that they called a Waldo. This thing, it sort of resembles, you could Google pictures of it, but it sort of resembles a high-tech oven mitt, is the best way that I could describe it probably. And it used radio waves to move the puppet's mouth in sync with the Waldo's mouth.
When Justice calls it a key innovation, he means it's witchcraft disguised as children's entertainment.
It's pretty insane.
Imagine if you're a tourist and you're walking through Central Park, you're like eating a hot dog, and then Kermit starts moving on a park bench like he's seen the void or something, and he's just like talking to you with like a low voice. It's not whimsical. It's like traumatic. I see him just like he's vibing on the bench, no puppeteer in sight. It's like Annabelle or something. It's just like just a weird fucking. I'm just saying I'd run. I don't care how many banjos he's got.
If we're keeping track, we're gonna do a Muppet version of Hellraiser and Annabelle.
Yep.
We're gonna keep this list going, fellas.
I just need the scene of Kermit's head spinning backwards and he's singing "It's Not Easy Being Green" in like Latin.
While like pea soup comes out of his mouth.
Oh yes.
So while using these things, this Waldo, the Muppet performer no longer had to find creative ways to hide themselves. So instead, a remote control Kermit, like Gary said, could be sitting on a bench. Right? We see that in the movie where he's talking to the what's her name, Pete's daughter. They're sitting on the bench, and obviously there's nowhere to put a puppeteer in that because the bench. I mean, we see underneath the bench, we see the whole thing, so there's no way to do that really. So they could have a Kermit that's radio controlled sitting on that bench out in the middle of New York City, like on a street. They're not in a studio, they're out on location, while Jim was off screen yards away manipulating the puppet's mouth via radio control.
It's like if NASA made like a BDSM glove for puppeteers or something. You put it on and move your hand, and like your little felt freak starts doing whatever you want with its mouth. And then somewhere out there's one of you listeners whose fetish just got validated right now.
You're like, somebody out there just got a boner listening to you describe that. That's what you're saying.
Right? You're like, this is everything I ever hoped for.
From all of us at Cinema Shock to all of you listening, you can come now.
Wow. Thank you for the permission, Todd. Yep.
Oh, I've been doing this retention for so long.
Oh, I just lost bone density.
So Henson's crew had plenty of experience with Waldos by this time. They were an extension of the tech that Faz Fazakis had created for Emmett Hodder. They were further refined for the Dark Crystal, and they were being extensively used on Fraggle Rock because they used them to perform the Doozers and the Gorg's heads.
Which, by the way, means some poor bastard was like under the giant foam Gorg head, and he's trying to make it blink. I'm just picturing like Fraggle Rock being like Vietnam for puppeteers because that just sounds terrible.
Well, the person in the Gorg wouldn't be moving it. Somebody else would be moving the face from off screen. So it would be a multi-performer kind of thing.
But even the Doozers are cute, but like I feel like you got carpal tunnel from like handling them. And
every single person who had a career as a Muppeteer has had so many neck and shoulder surgeries and wrist surgeries. Just, I mean, I've heard Dave Goles talk about it, like how many times he's had to have surgery because he's got his hand up like this all the time. So imagine doing this for like hours and hours a day for most of your life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If I sleep funny on my shoulder, I'm sore for 2 days, right? And I got to go to the chiropractor or something. Imagine that if doing that was your job, like literally what you're doing all day, every day.
Your rotator cuff is ruined.
Oh, it's fucked. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're like standing under like a 4-foot stage the whole time with your arm above your head.
And sometimes sometimes your head's got to be like this. You know, you're next to the side if you're doing a scene with another performer because you're smushed up against each other. So you're having to lean your head to the side, so your neck's getting all fucked. And yeah, it does not seem fun Honestly, I'm sure there's a lot of fun to be had being a Muppeteer, but there is a physical toll being taken on people. I honestly think the Waldos probably helped with that. I mean, you can't use them for every scene because the movement is not as natural. Like you can, if you watch this scene with Kermit on the park bench, there's a little bit of a robotic nature to it. Like you can kind of tell the way his mouth moves is not as natural as when it's Jim Henson's hand moving him. Same thing with like one of my favorite scenes in this is towards the beginning with the Dabney Coleman scene where Animal attacks him and Animal's like up on the door frame, where he's like right, and that's obviously there's not a puppeteer there because there's nowhere to put anyone, so that's an animatronic head on Animal, and there's something a little less believable about it than a normal Muppet.
Slightly delayed.
It's a little robotic. It feels like an animatronic that you'd see like in the Hall of Presidents or something. No, it doesn't feel as real as the Muppets often do.
Yeah,
we have so many advancements now, though. Like my one dream for this world is that Grok or ChatGPT can insert themselves into a Muppet body someday and bring my dream to life.
How much money is Elon Musk paying you to talk about Grok on every episode?
Not as much as he could. That's for sure.
Well, yeah.
He could toss like a few scraps my way.
A few scraps for him would be more money than you make in your entire life.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So a little side note that I found. The term Waldo. I was wondering why it was called a Waldo, so I looked into it.
You found Waldo?
That got me.
I think it almost made you cry. We almost got Justin to cry on this episode. With the worst joke I've made so far, maybe.
I don't think that's true. So, but anyway, the term Waldo, I found out, came from a 1942 novella written by Robert A. Heinlein. Robert A. Heinlein, one of the most famous sci-fi authors of all time. But if you want to tie him into Cinema Shock, he wrote Starship Troopers.
Oh.
So, which... Todd, why do you act so surprised? We did a whole episode on Starship Troopers.
I forgot about that.
This changes everything.
No, wait. Let me rephrase. I forgot that he wrote the book. I remembered that we did an episode about Starship Troopers. I've taken a lot of shots to the head, not that many.
Anyway, in this story that he'd written, I for some reason did not write down the name of the novella like an idiot, but in this novella that he wrote, there's a disabled scientist named Waldo who builds a robot to amplify his limited abilities. So it's sort of like it's a very early concept of like an animatronic, essentially, or something that could be controlled with a robot. So that's where the name came from. That's where they got it from, was from this Robert A. Heinlein novel. And another side note, a computer graphic character that was created for the Jim Henson Hour, this is a few years later, there was a computer graphic character made 100% CGI, is named Waldo C. Graphic. That's his name. And if you've ever been to Disney World and gone to Muppet Vision 3D, there is a 3D character that's CGI in that show. That's Waldo C. Graphic, who is the kind of one of the stars of that show, which was very innovative at the time. In 1990 or so, when that ride debuted, computer graphics were not being very heavily used. And it was created by a company that's going to create a computer graphic that's used at the beginning of Jim Henson's next movie, Labyrinth. You know, the owl at the beginning, the CGI owl, the same company created that. So, but his name was Waldo, also named after the same Robert A. Heinlein novel. So some fun weird little side notes that I found.
Nice.
In my research.
Nice.
Where are we at?
And I'll go ahead and mute myself.
If you're playing Cinema Shock Bingo today, if you have one of the squares that says Todd says nice, then you're doing pretty good. Todd hasn't cried yet. He came pretty close, but that did not count yet.
Nope.
Wait till we start talking about the music of Muppets Take Manhattan, I guess, and we'll see what happens. But have your little bingo stamp ready, folks.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, what are we talking about anyway? The script?
Yeah, we're talking about the Muppets Take Manhattan.
Okay. So once Frank Oz had a core script in place and sets were being built, it was time to focus on that age-old Muppet tradition, the celebrity cameos. Oz brought in a writer named David Mish as a special consultant. That's what he's credited as. A special consultant specifically to script the cameo scenes, working them organically into the script while catering to each celebrity's personality. This guy, David Mish, I should note, is not the same David Mish who killed 4 women in San Francisco in the 1980s. Because when I Googled him, that's what came up.
It would have been a cooler story.
Not for lack of trying.
I mean, I don't think it's the same guy. But, no,
Breaking news here on Cinema Shock.
Because I searched for it, and I was like, I'm going to find a little background on this guy. And when I searched it came up with a Wikipedia article about a man who killed 4 women, a serial killer in San Francisco. But no, I did find this David Mish was a stand-up comedian. He had writing credits as well. He wrote on Mork and Mindy. He wrote on Police Squad. He wrote on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, wow.
And he was later the showrunner on the adult animated sitcom that I loved at the time, but completely forgot it existed until I read this, Duckman, starring Jason Alexander.
Wow.
So he was one of the, it wasn't the creator because it was based on a comic book, but he was the showrunner on that show for several seasons.
Oh, that's so weird. Also killed 4 women, which seems dark. Seems dark, but those kills were wacky.
They were very funny.
Okay, so another T-shirt, it'll say David Mish, and then it'll be like, worked on Muppets, killed 4 women, and at the bottom it'll say, who's to say?
So if you're playing Cinema Shock Bingo and you have the square that says Todd recommends a T-shirt.
I found an interview with David Mish, and he talks about that he was a huge fan of the Great Muppet Caper. The way he describes how him coming in there was just they were unhappy with Caper doing less well than the previous one, and they wanted to go back to what they perceived were the earlier movie's strengths, he said, which were warmth and character. But he said he was trying to help Frank Oz get that, but he liked the zany stuff too from Muppet Caper, and so he would keep pitching ideas for like funny jokes, and that Frank Oz would usually decline.
You don't hire the guy that wrote on Police Squad to not make funny, stupid jokes. Like,
right. He said that Frank did tell him, like we talked about earlier, after the movie was done, he said that Oz said that he may have made a mistake and a little more edginess might have helped.
Yeah, I should have kept some of those jokes.
I was looking through to see like what he had written out that Oz rejected, and he does say in the interview, the gags I most remember hating to lose were when Kermit, distraught at his failure to get a show on Broadway, goes to the Empire State Building. He takes an elevator to the top, and then when it arrived at the top, as he was trying to get out, he had to wait because 2 gigantic gorilla legs get out of the elevator ahead of him.
That's good.
Oh, man.
That would have been great.
Yeah. He thought that was funny. He also says during that scene that he gives that impassioned speech, and that somebody down below on the street's like, shut the hell up, we're trying to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, some of his gags are funny. Like, I sent you guys a scan of one of his script pages from his website that I found that he had annotated with a couple of things. And one of them, it talks about like a college sign, and it says over 40,000 educated, like, like a McDonald's, over 5 billion served or whatever.
Yeah.
But the college sign also said, we'll make you more smarter, which is a funny joke. Like, that's a funny joke. It tells you about the quality of the college or whatever, but obviously not every joke can make it into a movie. But yeah, he was kind of like hired to punch up the script a little bit, but specifically to write these celebrity cameos. That's kind of like what they brought him on for, because the script was pretty much in place otherwise. So the list of scheduled guest stars for this film was very star-studded. This probably goes back to them trying to do like what they did on the first film, because the second film has some celebrity cameos, but nothing as big as like some of the names that they got on the first movie. Like the first film, I mean, there are some like Steve Martin, like there are some great huge names in there.
Yeah.
So the list of guest stars for this one included, actually Steve Martin, they were going to bring him back. Dustin Hoffman, who, I mean, this is at the height of probably his stardom. Michael Jackson. In 1984, Michael Jackson, probably the most famous person in the world. Lily Tomlin, Richard Pryor, and Laurence Olivier. So these are the people that they had signed, they had talked to about doing this. Now, Dustin Hoffman was set to play a Broadway producer. I think it's the same. I think maybe the guy who his son ends up being the producer. I'm assuming that's the Broadway producer. Maybe not, though. Maybe it was just a cameo of one of the people who rejected the thing. I'm not really sure. But Dustin Hoffman he had planned to do it as an imitation of famed film producer Robert Evans. But Hoffman got cold feet at the last minute. Because he didn't want to offend Robert Evans, who was still probably one of the most powerful people in Hollywood at the time. So he didn't want to piss him off, I guess. And when he got cold feet, he decided to drop out. He's like, I'm not going to do the movie. And that sort of started a domino effect where other big names started dropping out. So all of a sudden, they don't have any of their celebrity cameos.
A little bit about Robert Evans, if you're unfamiliar, Patton Oswalt has a great closing bit to one of his albums all about Robert Evans. But if you want to see a really good imitation of Robert Evans, look at Matthew Good's performance in the miniseries The Offer, about the production.
Oh my God, he brought it back.
Of The Godfather, available now on Paramount Plus. I'm bringing it back, baby.
I've never heard anyone talk about The Offer more than Todd A. Davis. Also, if you want to see a good imitation of Robert Evans, watch Wag the Dog, where Dustin Hoffman does basically do an imitation of Robert Evans years later, obviously. Or if you want to know more about Robert Evans, watch The Kid Stays in the Picture, the documentary about him, because it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really
or listen to the audiobook where Robert Evans reads it, which is also really great. So anyway, so everyone's dropped out, all of these celebrity cameos, and they're only about 2 months away from cameras rolling. So it was too late to completely rewrite the cameo scenes. They'd already written the scenes and worked them into the movie. So instead, Mish and Oz had to rewrite the dialogue in all of these scenes so that it fit the celebrities that they were able to get as replacements. So basically, they would plug somebody else into a scene as like a producer or Broadway producer or whatever, but they'd kind of have to rewrite it to cater it to that person, you know? Like this is how Dustin Hoffman was going to do it, but this is how Dabney Coleman's going to do it, kind of thing, you know? So they may not have gotten the A-listers like Dustin Hoffman and Michael Jackson and Sir Laurence Olivier, but they got some pretty good names. Like I mentioned Dabney Coleman already, but they got Art Carney in there, Gregory Hines, John Landis, who, as we know, is friends with Frank and Jim, Liza Minnelli, Joan Rivers, Brooke Shields, and Elliot Gould, who plays a totally different character than who he played in the Muppet movie. He plays a cop in this one, like a very, very brief scene. So, you know, not a bad group of people. Definitely not quite as big as what they were shooting for, though. Now, most of these cameos are pretty short, usually less than a minute of screen time. Like Brooke Shields is literally like, I don't know, 15 seconds or something. It's just
like 2 lines.
Oh, yeah, it's her sitting at a table and Rizzo the Rat getting really horny when he sees her. Is basically her cameo. So, one of the exceptions, though, is probably Joan Rivers, who appears in a very memorable scene as Miss Piggy's perfume counter co-worker.
I recall loving this cameo all the way back to it's
so funny,
silly, funny. I and to this day, like I can't help but laugh along with them in this scene. And I'm gonna go ahead and say best cameo since Steve Martin in the Muppet movie. Maybe even better. I don't know.
It's
like
not better than the Steve Martin. No, I would fight you on that one. But
okay.
I also happen to think Steve Martin is one of the funniest people to ever live.
That's fair.
And Joan Rivers, I think, is very funny, but I don't think she holds a candle to Steve Martin, especially in that part in the Muppet movie. But it is a great cameo, though. Joan Rivers. It's definitely the best cameo in this one for sure. So when they were filming this scene, they did a couple of takes. The first few takes were pretty lackluster. They weren't quite as funny as they wanted them to be. So Frank Oz came up with a creative solution. He had a production assistant go fetch a couple of gin and tonics for Joan Rivers and himself, because remember, he's also performing in the scene. He's Miss Piggy. Right. And in between takes, Oz and Rivers had their own little happy hour. They start chatting it up. They each down a couple of G&Ts. Afterwards, they filmed one final take, and that is the take that we see in the movie, with Joan Rivers and Frank Oz, or rather Miss Piggy, just, a little bit tipsy.
That's great.
Isn't that great?
He talks about it in the commentary. It says it was all about like the laughter of the scene. Like there was just, because that was part of it. They just had to be so
like giggly,
over giggly and laughing loud. And he said it always just felt forced, like over and over again. So in comes alcohol.
Yes,
that always helps. Yeah. And he said by the end he wasn't even 100% sure what they had done at that point. He just said it was over, and he was like, "Cut, print it. That's the one. I don't care. That's the one we're going with.
It's got to be good enough." But luckily, it was.
Well, it's unique because, like right off the bat, Piggy says, "My frog turned on me," and Joan gets the punch there.
That's good.
I had some bad tuna myself, but bump. Like, It's such a unique scene, and yeah, I know I said it already, but that laughter is just infectious.
And I wonder what happened to the Miss Piggy with the makeup all over it. Like I feel like that's
Yes.
like of all the Miss Piggies, like that one needs to be on display somewhere.
Oh,
Yes.
no, it's great. I love that the whole thing spawned. It's like one of my favorite scenes for the movie too. Just like Todd, I've always remembered that scene, and I love that it comes from like, oh, it's not working. Cool, let's get fucked up and let the puppet take the wheel.
Right.
Like let's just go at it.
Yep.
And keep in mind, Frank Oz isn't just directing. He's got his arm shoved up Miss Piggy's asshole while he's knocking back Jen. It's not acting. It's like a whole war crime is happening with jazz hands. And Rivers is going, she's cackling like a maniac, and Miss Piggy's losing her goddamn mind, and you can just feel it. It's like,
yes,
it's performance art now. Imagine explaining to your therapist that your job stress is because you were blackout drunk performing a pig in front of Joel fucking Rivers. It's chaos. I love that.
Yeah, it's a fun story and a great scene. One of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Very gay icon aura.
Oh yeah,
just,
yeah.
Oh,
between Piggy and
rooting for both of them.
Yeah. One of my favorite cameos, other than that one in the movie, though, is Gregory Hines, who appears as a roller skater in Central Park, whose skates are borrowed by Miss Piggy. Now, between this and multiple instances of Grand Theft Auto and Great Muppet Caper, I'm starting to think that Miss Piggy has a problem. Like she's I don't know if she's a kleptomaniac or what it is, but she steals. I know we've seen her steal an automobile and a motorcycle before this, and now something about wheels that she just wants to take them. So she does it again here. She steals his roller skates for a really great chase sequence. So she ties on the skates. She's in this big chase scene, which for some shots required a human stunt double in a life-size Piggy costume. Not unlike that motorcycle sequence in Caper. It's very off-putting. It
is weird to see Piggy actually there skating, but it was a little person in the Piggy costume, according to Oz on the commentary. But I also will say I just fucking love Gregory Hines. He's so good.
He's great.
I just love how, I don't know, something about that guy is just very charismatic to me.
He's very charismatic, and there's something about him that is fascinating to me because he's famous for, like, his comic timing in this scene is really good.
Oh yeah,
and I love the way that scene is shot. I love the end of the scene where Piggy and Kermit are talking, and it's one long take, and you see him running from all the way in the back, and they never cut. You see him the whole time.
Frank Oz talks about that in the commentary, just like he said he just like envisioned that, like that he wanted to see Gregory Hines just come from the back. You know, he just wanted to see him run up to.
It's funny. I don't know why. I don't know why, but that does make it funnier. But Gregory Hines is, for people who aren't familiar with him, not just a great like comedic actor, but he got famous for being a dancer, a tap dancer, an incredible tap dancer. So go look up, just go on YouTube and search Gregory Hines tap dancing. The dude was an immense talent. Like it's a cool cameo. It's also just a very fun scene, like the whole Piggy chasing them on roller skates. And when we're talking about like a life-size Piggy costume, those are only for like the really wide shots. And she's mostly like out of focus in the background, but you can like where you like see Kermit in the foreground and you'll see her in the background kind of blurry, but that's obviously a person in a costume. For everything else, they're using puppets or animatronics.
The interesting thing with that commentary with Frank Oz that makes it like a fun watch is just that he doesn't ever get like too technical at any point, but and because he says like, my job in this is not to get too technical with you, because this wasn't like some movie where I had these sweeping shots and these great concepts for like, you know, the reason the lighting is this way and that way. He was like, it's a Muppet movie, so I'm kind of like just making sure that we go with what we know works with the Muppets.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to tell you about the people that are involved and how cool it is what they did. Then I'll tell you the story and why the story is going this way and what's happening, you know. And he's like, and if there's ever once in a while where there's like something unique that we did, I'll tell you why I chose to do it that way. And this is one of the scenes where like he talks about like that chase scene. That was Henson, like a lesson he learned from Henson about switching between just like rapidly between between the views of Miss Piggy and stuff
Yeah.
like that just like brings her to life even more. He said just to like have that you can see her for a second like skating behind, but that it's a close up and it's obviously he's like I'm on a dolly like underneath her, you know. And
It's kind of like tricking your brain into believing that she's real by doing that, because you
very
you don't get to
much.
see her in one iteration for a long enough period of time for your brain to break the.
Again, you're getting a full body shot, but you're seeing her take at least 2 or 3 strides on the skates, and it's like she's definitely moving differently than we see like the normal bopping up and down that Muppets do. I had a thought, and maybe this would be better left for the discussion, but I want to say it now before I forget it. Gregory Hines, being a dancer, working with music, and Frank Oz, Jim Henson, and Gregory Hines, and we talk about great comedic timing. And I've even noticed in my own interactions, you know, in stand-up with musicians, there seems to be a sort of a connection there of working together and being able to understand comedic timing from a musician's standpoint. Do you think that there's any sort of correlation with that musicians understand comedic timing better than maybe a dramatic performer or other types of performers?
I've seen a lot of musicians make cameos in movies, and they are not funny. Like
Okay.
I think there are probably musicians who could probably who can be funny, but I don't think it's like an inherent thing.
Oh yeah,
it's
I'm not
like,
saying it's an across the board thing.
I've
but
seen plenty of. I mean, just watching the Muppet Show, like
that's what I was thinking. Like they had a lot of singers, dancers.
they did, but
musicians.
some of them are not very good. Like some of them,
That's
like,
also true.
Some of them, like I just watched the Leo Sayer episode, and they don't really give him hardly any actual skits outside of performing music, because the few times that they do, like he's pretty bad, So the answer to your question is no.
Well, and Gregory Hines is unique because
he's more than a dancer. Like he is
he has a long acting career.
Yeah.
Like he carries on for a while, at least until the early 2000s before he passed away, I think. But and he's just like part of that charisma too. Just that scene you were talking about where he runs up on them. It doesn't cut that whole time. Like it doesn't cut like while he runs up there. The whole interaction between all of them, and Oz talks about that in the commentary too, just about how somebody had suggested like maybe you cut to like different views of people or whatever, and he was like, no, he's like, the audience doesn't want you to always tell it where to look. It wants to be able to pick where you look. And he's like, and right now we've got 3 very interesting people on screen. They could choose where they're looking at any point, and something's happening, and it's just it's just fun to just keep it here on them.
Yeah, and it's very much like the pedestrian POV, like you're walking through the park and this happened, and so you kind of stop and just watch it unfold. But yeah, I was really listening to, especially on my rewatch, listening to the rhythm between Kermit and Piggy and Gregory Hines's character, and so I noticed the really in sync, really good give and take in that rhythm, and talking about musicians that way. I just wondered if you guys had any thoughts about that, but I guess not.
No.
I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, you were wrong, Todd.
Not the first time. Won't be the last.
Nice.
In that scene, Frank Oz really wanted to use a Steadicam for this chase. Now, Steadicams, they were still a relatively new piece of technology at this time. They were introduced less than a decade before this. I think they were first used in 1975 or 76. So there were very few camera operators who were trained to use them, which led to Oz hiring probably the best possible man for the job, a guy named Garrett Brown, who literally invented the Steadicam. So that's the guy. He's like, you know what?
It's a good guess.
Let's just get this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Garrett Brown was a big. I mean, he operated it. He was a camera operator who invented this. So he did this for a lot of movies. But I just thought it was cool that, like, hey, if you're gonna really want a Steadicam in this, get the guy who invented it to be your operator.
Well, it's always neat to watch these things and then like get some perspective or like some context historically for like where things were. That, for instance, like the Steadicam was not a heavily used thing at this point in films. And so
I mean,
Oz, or at least Oz talks about that too in the commentary, that was the guy they could get. Like that was the person who made sense.
Right. I mean, and it had been used. I mean, he was one of the go-to guys to hire as a Steadicam operator for obvious reasons, because he knew how it worked better than anyone else. But he had been the Steadicam operator on probably the most famous use of a Steadicam still to this day, which is in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. He was the operator on that one. If you want a fact about him that's a little more related to a previous Cinema Shock series, he was also the Steadicam operator on John Waters' Polyester.
Oh, nice! Look
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah, a little.
I mean that nice unironically.
Did you expect a John Waters Jim Henson crossover here? Miss Piggy as Divine in Pink Flamingos would be a pretty fantastic.
Like, there's no shot that John Waters doesn't like Jim Henson. Like, I feel like John.
Oh
Waters
yeah,
would be-
absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
super into the Muppets.
I mean, you've got the whole scene where they fuck a chicken in Pink Flamingos. I mean, just recast Gonzo and Camilla.
I wish they had used Camilla instead of a real chicken.
Yeah, well, yeah. Camilla didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So
I will say too, during that Central Park filming session, what I thought was really cool about it too is just that, you know, all the technology we're talking about that they're using and doing there. There was the stuff I was joking about Kermit being on the bench earlier. But there was a story about how there was like a technical delay or something. They're just like sitting around, but Henson is at the bench with Kermit. They would talk about how like people walking by and doing stuff would stop and watch the production. And it was interesting to watch how, like we talked about early on with like talk shows and everything too, people were watching the puppets.
Yeah.
And not acknowledging that there were people behind them or hidden or anything or like under the bench, or it was like they didn't even notice them. They were watching Kermit. And they said that at one point a small child stumbled onto the set and went up to Kermit like during a technical delay and started talking to Kermit, and that Henson just rolled with it. And just started interacting with the kid and like having a conversation with him as Kermit. And the kid, like, just like he didn't even register that Jim Henson was even there.
Yeah.
Stop trying to make me cry, Gary. Fuck.
God, Todd always curses at himself when he thinks he's about to cry. Every single time.
You can have emotions, Todd.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. I think that's cute. I think it's cool that says something about Jim Henson, like what kind of a person he is. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're talking about cameo appearances, I guess we should probably also talk about the rest of the cast, you know, the folks that have more than a minute or so of screen time. I don't think we need to go through all the Muppet cast again. It's all of your usual suspects at this point. You've got Henson, Oz, Dave Gulls, Richard Hunt, Jerry Nelson. They're all playing their regular characters. But let's talk about their human co-stars. So in the role of Pete, the owner of the diner where Kermit gets a job, we have Louis Zorich, who was a seasoned actor of stage and screen who'd made his film debut in 1966 as the Russian ambassador in the Japanese kaiju movie Gamera the Giant Monster. Isn't that fucking crazy?
That is weird.
That is nuts. Zorich had steady work as a character actor, including a small role in Frank Oz's Dirty Rotten Scoundrels at the very end. He plays the Greek billionaire who comes in on the boat at the end, if you've seen that movie. And he was married to Olympia Dukakis until his death in 2018 at the age of 93.
That is wild. Like, what a power couple that is.
All right. Yeah.
This is unrelated to that, but I just thought it was interesting, just as a side note. In the diner at one point, Oz pointed this out and I didn't know, but Martin Scorsese's parents are patrons in the diner.
I think just his dad. I think it's just the dad.
Oh yeah. I think his dad was there. I want to say they were in another scene, but I can't remember. But
they're definitely in the diner scene. I've seen
in
like,
the diner scene. Yeah. I think it's actually, this is out of place, I guess technically, but yeah, I think it's actually when Kermit calls to tell them that the show's getting picked up or whatever.
Oh,
and the girls are celebrating, and it cuts to like the diner patrons being like, you know, because they're screaming and going crazy, and they're all looking at him. And like, I think Scorsese's dad's there. I don't know why I thought to say that here, but here we are.
Well, I didn't clock it like while watching the movie this time, but I did see a screenshot of him afterwards, and he's like very clear, like center frame, like he's right there. Not that everyone's going to know what Martin Scorsese's father looks like, but I mean, he's made cameo appearances in Scorsese movies, not as many as his mother. But if you've ever seen Italian American, Martin Scorsese's documentary, where it's basically an hour and a half long interview with his parents. One, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic documentary. Then you'll recognize the guy. He is quite a character. Both of
Yeah.
Scorsese's parents are characters.
That's what Oz was saying, was talking about just how cool they were. And
Yeah.
just, he was saying, oh, I actually have his quote here. He said, they were so sweet and overjoyed to
Yeah.
be a part of the movie. And it was great because your son is one of the greatest directors of all time. And
Yeah.
you could be a regular part of any film that he makes. But they just seemed excited to be extras. And like that they wanted to do it, but they wanted to be able to joke around with their friends and not have any stress of like remembering lines or doing the other BS.
Because they had done
just
that
wanted to hang
before.
out.
I mean, well, it hadn't come out yet, but I think the probably biggest role that his mother, Scorsese's mother, had in one of his movies is in Goodfellas. I mean, she's got a very long scene in that where they go to, I guess it's Ray Liotta. She plays Ray Liotta's mother. Is that right? Or is it Joe Pesci?
That's
I
right.
can't remember. But yeah, in that dinner scene. But I just watched The King of Comedy, and she has a voice cameo in that one as Rupert Pipkin's mother, but you never see her on screen. You just hear her yelling at him from off screen a few times throughout the movie. Anyway, we got off. Who knew that we'd get off on a Martin Scorsese tangent during the Muppets Take Manhattan? But I've been watching a lot of Scorsese movies lately. I'm going through his whole filmography right now, so I've always got him like on the brain. So back to the cast. Anyway, the regular cast. So Pete's daughter Jenny is played by Juliana Donald, who oddly enough also made her feature film debut in a Japanese movie as a voice actress in the American dub of Hayao Miyazaki's first feature, The Castle of Cagliostro. Isn't that weird that she would make her debut in that of all things? Yeah, I thought that was really weird. The Muppets Take Manhattan was her first like live action movie role, and she appeared in a handful of other films after this, but she worked most extensively in television, where she appeared in everything from Murder, She Wrote to The X-Files and Walker, Texas Ranger, just kind of like a steady working, character actor who'd appear in one episode here and there but steady for decades.
Hot damn, is she charming as hell too?
She really
is
is.
just lovely in this movie. She's so cute.
I think I had a crush on her growing up.
Yeah.
I think I did too. It like brought it back watching it. I was just like, wow, she's so cute.
Yeah, and very sweet,
Sincere. And that was the thing too, by the way, is that she tells the story that, they were having trouble. They wanted a bigger name actress for this role. The producers were having trouble finding somebody, or they were trying to like nail down somebody, but she had heard before she even went to her audition, or she went to the audition for this reason or something, but she got a leg up that the problem they were having with everybody was everybody seems like they're talking at the Muppets. And she made it a point to be very focused in on Kermit and treat him like he is a co-star and like interact with him.
Yeah.
She said like Jim Henson and Frank Oz were in that audition, and they immediately were like, we believed that. Like,
wow,
you are talking to Kermit. And they hired her for that reason, that she looked like she just was comfortable just being there in that scene with the Muppet.
Yeah. Wow. And finally, in the role of aspiring Broadway producer Ronnie Crawford, we have Lonnie Price, an actor who's appeared in a handful of movies, including Dirty Dancing, which is definitely his most significant role outside of this one. But like Juliana Donald, he worked more in television than in film. But most of his career has been spent on stage as an actor and director on Broadway and off-Broadway, where he's directed plays like Sunset Boulevard, Sweeney Todd, and Company. Like, he is a pretty kind of big shot Broadway director.
It's weird because I'm supposed to remember that he's Neil from Dirty Dancing.
Yeah.
And what's he say? I have to say it. I'm known as the catch of the country. Last week, I took Jamie, a girl from Jamie, the lifeguard. He said to her right in front of everybody, what does he have that I don't have? And she said to his face, 2 hotels.
Because in Dirty Dancing, that's a character you're not supposed to like, and here he's very
it's the girl. It's like he's taking baby.
Like he is Patrick Swayze's like rival essentially.
Yeah, he's like the rich kid.
Yeah.
Who is trying to woo baby with money and all of that stuff.
But here he's so like sweet and nice, and like they don't try to throw in a weird like romantic subplot with him and what's her name, Jenny, like, which you would expect a movie to do. I don't know, he's just it's a nice character. He's just a nice character who wants to do something good.
Yeah.
And
he's all about this weird production and really wants to get it off the ground.
So the third Muppet movie, now known as The Muppets Take Manhattan, began filming in New York City on May 31st, 1983. Now, shooting in the city where Jim Henson lived definitely had its advantages. Like, he could just go home to his apartment after a day's shoot. He loved that, that's great. I think everyone lived nearby. I know Jim Henson definitely had an apartment there in New York City. But there were some difficulties that stemmed from shooting on location. Whereas on something like the Muppet movie, they were able to dig trenches to hide the Muppet performers from view. Remember, we talked about that, where they would dig a hole and they would all basically hide in it and cover it up. That's not really possible when you're filming in Midtown Manhattan. Like, you can't dig a hole in the middle of like Times Square or somewhere. Like it's a little more difficult. There were some
some of the potholes are pretty deep. They're not that
right.
deep.
So they had to find pretty creative ways to keep the puppeteers out of sight. Shooting on location also meant that the Muppet Workshop needed to set up camp nearby so that they could make any needed repairs on the fly. Because when they're shooting on a soundstage, obviously they've got all the stuff there. They've got all their parts to make repairs and things. Shooting on location, that's a little more difficult. So they had to kind of set up a almost like a mobile Muppet Workshop, where they could have all the stuff that they needed just in case there were emergency repairs that needed to be made. They did the same thing with a mechanical shop, because they had all kinds of animatronics and the Waldos and things like that. So they had to set up basically a mobile mechanical shop to fix any technical issues that may have come up during the shoot.
I wish that I could have the job of emergency Muppet mechanic.
Yeah, like Muppet Doctor.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Miss Piggy's jaw just dislocated during that last number. We're going to need somebody over here stat. Fozzie's eyeballs dangling.
But that stuff did happen, and they got rips, and eyeballs fell off, and they had all that stuff, and just in case, So one of the people actually working in the mechanical shop that summer was 19-year-old Brian Henson. Now, Brian, he's worked a little bit on all of these movies, like as a teenager, because they were being filmed during his summer breaks and things like that. He went off to college. He'd been attending at the University of Colorado, where he was studying astrophysics and art. But he always had an eye on a career in film, specifically in special effects, which was an art that he had cultivated by working in the Muppet Workshop with Faz Fazakis over the years. He was doing astrophysics because he thought that would sort of translate to the mechanical stuff, like doing physics, the physics part of it.
It's a hell of a major combination.
Yeah, astrophysics and art. Yeah. But I want to work in film. So interesting. Yeah, but that was his reasoning behind it.
I was literally thinking the same thing. I was like, can we talk about how this man was literally going to be an astrophysicist, and then he's like one semester away from like launching rockets, and is like, I don't know, I'm going to sit in a truck behind a set and get elbow deep in a frog puppet.
I mean, eventually he did just quit school. He didn't end up finishing his degree there. He abandoned school altogether because he wanted to work at the Muppet Workshop full time. Although he didn't stay in the Muppet Workshop for too long, because about a year after the Muppets Take Manhattan, he was hired by the Walt Disney Company to perform in Return to Oz. He plays the puppet character Jack Pumpkinhead in Return to Oz.
Return to Oz, by the way, is that beautiful childhood trauma you barely remember.
Nightmare fuel.
Have the headless witch and electroshock therapy and a pumpkin man with the voice of this fucking kid who went from studying black holes to becoming one emotionally on screen.
I love Return to Oz. I love that it exists in the form that it exists in, because it is what a weird choice for Disney, of all people, to go, we're going to make a follow-up to The Wizard of Oz, but you know what it needs? It needs to traumatize every child who watches it. Like it needs
to have the Wheelers and make you cry yourself to sleep.
I need Dorothy to be as goth as possible.
Right, Fairuza Balk.
That's higher Fairuza Balk. But I remember liking it. It's been years since I've seen it. Maybe it's time for a rewatch.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen it too. And I remember actually really liking it as well. And it had like cool characters. I mean, kind of rip-offs from a lot of the stuff. But there was like the thing that flies though, but they put like the severed moose head on the front of it that comes to life or whatever. It's like
I'm fully convinced that Jack Pumpkinhead was where Tim Burton got the idea for Jack the Pumpkin King. Like at the beginning where he's wearing the pumpkin head during the This Is Halloween, like it looks exactly like the character from Return to Oz.
His whole build is exactly like
Yeah.
Jack Skellington. That's so weird. Yeah, I never thought of that, but that's
I wonder
probably
if
true.
Tim Burton didn't work on Return to Oz, did he?
He was one of the puppeteers in the Muppet movie.
Yeah, but he worked for Disney as an animator around this same time period.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder if
about
he
that.
did any design work on it. Something to look into, but not right now. We're still talking about the Muppets Take Manhattan. That's for
Tim
later.
Burton has stated on record that Jack Pumpkinhead served as the inspiration for his character Jack Skellington in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Well, there you go. Okay, good.
I just
okay.
Googled them together, and that's the first thing that came up.
Okay, good. So we found an answer. Thank you, Gary. One of my favorite visuals from the Muppets Take Manhattan comes pretty early on because I think it's just a funny joke. When all of the Muppets are living in storage lockers, something about the side of them in lockers, especially like when it cuts back to them later and they've kind of added their personal touches to their homes, their apartments. I just like that. I think it's really endearing to me. I think it's funny to think of them living in those like it's an apartment building.
Yeah.
But as originally shot, and I tried to find if this deleted scene was available anywhere, and I couldn't find it. But as originally shot, the scene starts with a bunch of little people leaving the storage lockers when the Muppets move in, like they were living inside of it. It was ultimately, and let's be honest, probably wisely cut from the film. But in his commentary, and Gary, you can back me up on this, but Oz describes being mortified when the actors and their families arrived for the film's premiere because he had not told them that their scenes had been cut.
The dick move.
That's true. He does mention that in the commentary that like he didn't even realize it until it was happening, but like these guys had shown up with families and stuff to like let them see themselves on screen and
then they're not even in it. But he also like says that from that point on, I made it a point that if I cut an actor's scene from a film, I'm gonna let them know. Like that is a thing that he does. If like you get completely cut out of the movie, he like will call you personally to say we had to cut this scene for whatever reason because he doesn't want to live through that again.
Yeah, he says he felt really terrible about it. Also, the movie is filled, I won't say filled, but there are multiple instances of Frank Oz being like, couldn't do that now.
Yeah.
You know, like animal chasing the woman through the
Oh,
auditorium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's like that joke wouldn't work now.
No, it would not. It would not. Animal's a sexual predator.
Right. Animal is going to rape someone at the college. Like another one of those scenes was like when Rizzo introduces his family and it's like, this is Yolanda. Wow, what a body.
Yeah.
He's just like,
crazy
Can't
body.
do that.
No, can't do that. Let's not sexualize the rat.
But anyway, I also, by the way, do love that locker scene. It's one of the scenes I've always remembered from it. Them
it's
just
really
all living
funny.
like it's a fucked up version of Rent or
Right.
something. Like, they're all just like hanging out.
Man, a
in
Muppet
there.
version of Rent would be great,
I
wouldn't
was
it?
gonna say, let's go ahead and add it to
Would
the
be.
list.
And you have
Everyone-
them all in their little metal boxes, like decorated with stuff. Like Gonzo's got his like fucking war vet PTSD trinkets all over the locker room. And
Hey,
Piggy's
Kurt, if you're listening, let's go ahead and start up that Google Doc of all the different movies we'd like to see. Thanks, Kurt.
Piggy's got her scented candles and like a Kermit revenge shrine or something like built in her little locker. Pretty good.
I'm pretty sure Lonnie Price directed Rent at one point. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like when I was looking him up, that was one of the things that he was involved with. Maybe he didn't direct it, but was still involved with a stage production of Rent at one point.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't think we could say, a lot of these Muppet movies, we've talked a lot about how on this one, they kind of like up the ante on innovations for puppetry, especially on the Dark Crystal. But it's kind of hard to say that with this one. They didn't really do any like huge innovations in the puppetry arts on the Muppets Take Manhattan. Nothing that at least held a candle to what Jim and Oz had done on like the Dark Crystal. But they did continue to kind of innovate a little bit on this one. Like there were some things here that they hadn't really done before. They had done differently and found new ways to create scenes with puppets. And I think one of the more technically difficult scenes was the one where Rizzo and his rat friends take over Pete's kitchen. That little song that they do. It's really fun. Another one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And that was a sequence that was directed by Jim Henson. Actually, Oz asked him to direct that scene because he knew that Jim loved the kind of detail-oriented work that the sequence would require. And also knew that his own perfectionism would have made the shoot, which was already going to take several days to do that scene. He knew that it would make it take even longer if he was doing it because Oz was very much a perfectionist.
That whiplash for Jim Henson must be immaculate. Like it just feels like it's just like he just got through designing an entire fucking universe in the Dark Crystal.
And now I'm going to make a rat roller skate on butter.
Yeah. I'm gonna film one scene in a kitchen. It's just a bunch of rats making pancakes.
Yep.
It's so weird.
But the thing is, like, each one of those rats has a different, or not every one of them, but there are multiple like techniques involved. There's a lot of marionettes in there.
Oz constantly talks about Henson's inspiration, but also I think he pronounced it like Foz.
Foz.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he probably knows better than I do. So
yeah, probably. But but yeah, that whole scene, and he talks about just like he's like, I would not have made this as good as they did in this. Like, it's just and when you hear that and as you're watching it, and you think about all those Henson shorts and like different things from Sesame Street, or whatever, it's just like you can't help but like just realize, this is Jim Henson. And
there's a rhythm to it that like comes from Jim Henson, I think, and I think that's one of the it's one of the more kind of I guess you'd say zippier scenes in the movie,
right?
And I think that comes from Jim Henson.
Honestly. Just the choice of the scat too, and all of that. It just feels like this is a thing he would do for sure.
Yeah, because it reminded me of the scene in the beginning of Muppet Christmas Carol where the rats and Kermit are shutting down the office.
Yeah,
and they're all doing different things. When I watched the movie again, when I watched Manhattan, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm seeing a lot of similar things and different techniques and stuff like that. And,
well,
I was like,
and this
that's
is
kinda
really
cool.
the first of these movies that's featured Rizzo prominently, which is a character that was created by Steve Whitmire. That was kind of his signature character at the time, as he was still very young at this time, in his early 20s, I think. But he had appeared on the show already by this point because Rizzo debuted on the show. But this is the first time in any of the Muppet movies that he's had like a major character. And then Rizzo becomes like, I would call him part of the core Muppet group. Yeah, I think Rizzo. Yeah. I mean, he's got well, unfortunately, it'll be closing in a few weeks, but he's got a whole restaurant at Disney World named after him, Pizza Rizzo. And so he's like an iconic character at this point. Obviously, Muppet Christmas Carol is a huge part of him becoming more iconic because him and Gonzo are the best part of that movie.
Oh, they're so great. That's definitely one of my favorite parts of that. Yeah, for sure.
Now, Oz's perfectionism was actually a point of contention on the set of the Muppets Take Manhattan. So ever since the Muppet Show days, Oz had always had this reputation for doing multiple takes of a scene in order to get it just exactly right. Like he's like a very type A type guy, like he wants to get every little detail exactly right. And he's not going to stop until he does. And that was frustrating for a lot of his fellow performers. Well, on the Muppets Take Manhattan, since he was in the boss's chair, that nitpicking got a lot worse because he's like, I'm the boss, I'm in charge. I can make you do 10 more takes if we need to do it. But he also didn't have Jim regularly at his side to kind of quell his worst tendencies. Because Jim would see something and go like, that's good enough. Let's move on, Yeah.
Yeah. Oz didn't just direct. He like obsessed. If like the puppet's hand twitched wrong during a background scene, he would reset. If Miss Piggy blinked like she was doubtful instead of sassy, reset. He was like Stanley Kubrick with a felt fetish is what this guy was. At a certain point, even Animal was like, this guy needs therapy. But Dave Goles, who we talked about a bunch with Gonzo. I found an interview with him talking about it, and it was a more recent interview, not like super recent, but more recent. He said, we have the hardest time working with him. Frank felt like he had to make every decision, dictate every tiny detail. He micromanaged every performance. Not sure I should say this, but even Jim was frustrated as the rest of us. However, he added, he said, now Frank now is a great collaborator. After everything that's happened, he's taken a lot of Jim's delicacy to heart, and he lets people contribute, solicits input, realizes his job is more about deciding what to include in the movie. And Frank even admits that too, like in the commentary, he talks about up top, just like everybody hated me during this. He was like, but I think they all like me now. But I even saw an interview with him with a thing called Tough Pigs in 2018, where he said, I was a first-time director, part writer. I performed 4 or 5 of my characters. I think I was just harder on everybody else, and I just wasn't realizing the situation I was in. He's like, you could just talk to Dave Goles about it. We laugh now, but he fucking hated me.
Well, he was probably trying to like maybe prove himself and like assert those like leader, like himself as a leader, and maybe just went too far with it. That's kind of like the vibe I get from it. And you know what Dave Goles is saying about Jim Henson even being frustrated. Brian J. Jones talks about that in the Jim Henson biography as well. That like Jim, like there was one day where Frank kept all the performers there late, like doing take after take after take, including Jim. And Jim was like visibly angry. And Jim was not like someone to show his anger. Like he had a very quiet, like stewing anger, but like you could tell that Jim that day he didn't like blow up at him or anything, but you could tell that Jim was upset because he was there. And Frank even says in the book, he's like, I kept Jim there and I didn't need to keep Jim there. I was just trying to show that I was like in charge kind of thing. So but he's learned his lessons. I mean, it was his first time doing this. The only other time he had directed was on The Dark Crystal, where he's directing alongside Jim. So there's a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
So the film's biggest moment, the one that really created a lot of pre-release buzz, was the final scene in which Kermit and Miss Piggy are married.
Oh.
Now, when word of this scene got leaked to the press, nobody knew. They just knew that there was a wedding scene. Nobody knew that it was part of a Broadway musical. So there were legitimate questions as to whether or not Kermit and Piggy were getting married. Like, is this canon? Is this is this real? Are they going to be married from now on? Like, news outlets were treating it like celebrity news, as if Piggy and Kermit were real people. It's pretty funny. So to keep the sequence a secret during filming, which I guess didn't really work out too well, but because it did leak. But they shot it on a soundstage in Long Island, where 175 puppeteers were crammed under the chapel set to perform nearly 200 puppets in attendance at the wedding. I counted them because I found on the Muppet Wiki, I sent you guys a link to it, I think, or it's in the notes. But on Muppet Wiki, there is a seating chart for the Muppets Take Manhattan wedding, where you can see the names of every single character that is there.
Wow.
It's pretty great. It's really fun to look through, to look at all the names and everything. Because some of them are like, you barely remember them from this little thing. Like, of course, you've got your core Muppet cast. You've got your Gonzo and your Scooter and all those guys, but there are also several characters from Sesame Street, which we see. I mean, we see Big Bird and Ernie and Cookie Monster all interact. They have to sit in the back because Big Bird's so tall, so he has to sit in the very back. But they've also got minor characters from the Muppet Show, and like the babies and the random dogs and stuff like that from the Muppet Show, like background characters almost in the Muppet Show. So to pull this whole thing off, because there were so many characters at one time, and you see them all in one shot, they had to bring in puppeteers from all over New York. So they put out kind of a casting call to get puppeteers coming in. And any puppeteer in New York, basically, was probably called to the scene. So this was kind of like the final shot of the Muppet movie, but multiplied a couple of times over, because there's more puppets here than there were even in that shot.
You think they got paid? I'm just
they probably
imagining.
got I imagine they got at least day player salary.
I'm just imagining some poor intern having to like call all those people and be like, "Hey, we need you in Long Island at like 5 a.m. to come stick your hand up a puppet ass." And,
well, if you're a puppeteer,
we'll give you a bagel.
If you're a puppeteer and someone calls you and says, "Hey, do you want to do one day shoot on the next Muppet movie?"
You're gonna say yeah.
You're gonna say yes.
Imagine for a second though that you're like part of 175 sweaty ass puppeteers crammed under a fake church, and it's like the least sexy eyes wide shut orgy you could possibly have. Just like sweaty hands and fuzzy asses, elbows and faces. Somebody farted. It's just like I just think it sounds terrible. I don't know why.
Yeah, but that's what these people. That's what they do. So, but since it was shot on a soundstage, they were able to modify the set like they did on, the Muppet Show and things like that, where it was an elevated set, so they could have a trench below the church for all the puppeteers to stand in. So it's not like they're crouched down. They were actually able to stand up, I think, like full body, stand up and hold up without having to like be hunched over the whole time. But it would not be an easy sequence to shoot, but man, it sure turns out great.
Oh yeah.
I mean, having actual puppeteers in there, not just like puppets on sticks like they would do in some background scenes sometimes when there was a crowd scene on the Muppet Show, where they didn't move.
Yeah.
Like having them all there as like real characters really adds a lot to it. I don't know why they thought that a Broadway show would need that many extras in a scene, but that's a logic problem. So this scene was extensively rehearsed so that all of the puppeteers could sync their movements to the dialogue and movement. So, for example, in the scene where Piggy insists that the wedding is real, or I guess she sort of hints at the wedding being real, during the ceremony.
Yeah.
Several of the puppets turn, gasp, or cheer in unison, and this was a move that took hours to perfect. And Oz, who is known for his meticulousness, as we've said, did multiple takes to capture the chaos perfectly. And to top it all off, the minister officiating the wedding is a real-life minister named Dr. Cyril Jenkins, which added to the debate about whether or not Kermit and Piggy were legally married, as if Muppets could be legally married.
This is so weird to me. Like it's I don't know. I was just thinking about the idea that everybody was so invested in the media in this. And then now you've added the layer of like, there's a real minister involved. And like Oz, even in his commentary, is just like, oh, this is funny because it's a real thing. So like, we were hoping it would be like a discussion. Like, did they get married? Did they not? Jim was like, I like it being a mystery. Like, are they really? I don't know. And
I think they like the idea of being able to bring it up like during the press tour to promote the film, like where Piggy and Kermit could have this back and forth about whether or not it was real, so that added, by them actually casting a real minister, it gave them fuel for that,
right. It's just crazy. I'm thinking about Jim Henson just like drinking coffee and reading about like or watching like Good Morning America or something, and they're talking about if Piggy and Kermit are actually married or something, and I just think that's funny to think about. Or they have like the Brangelina conversations about the two of them, and it's just like these two Muppets, and like, did they or didn't they? Is Kermit Jewish? I don't know. Can he
Mr. and Mrs.
Pig?
the Frog?
I get it. I saw where you were going with that, Gary.
You saw where I was going with
yeah, that was a dirty joke, but
wow. Anyway, so anyway, all of these are cool scenes. The other cool thing.
Oh, I get it. Kermit eating her ham wallet.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Todd.
Wow. There's like taking it to the edge and then like kicking it over the edge.
First of all, I don't think we had to explain it. And second of all, we definitely didn't have to explain it like that. That's the worst term I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that is awful. That's like
I hate that.
Another cool scene that I really liked in this movie, not to take away from the wedding if we weren't done talking about it, but just to say, I love the stuff in Sardi's with Liza Minnelli.
And David Laser.
And David Laser is in there.
He's
in
there.
That's him actually walking with
Liza
Minnelli.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the actual owner of Sardi's, he plays himself.
Yeah, and that at least is in the recent thing I looked up, that painting of Kermit is still in there.
Oh, what did they do with Liza Minnelli's?
Well, no, it was like in the picture I saw of it, it was on a different wall.
Oh, okay.
It was just like as you're coming in, there was like a wall with Kermit's picture there.
It's a great scene. I love the whole whispering campaign that they do in that.
Well, so Oz says that was actually the reason David Laser was so involved there, is like that's a thing he would always talk about. Like, let's start a whisper campaign.
Really?
Let's do a whisper campaign.
like in real life, like he would
in real life, he would say that. And so Oz was like, I used that in this scene and like brought him in for it so he could be in the scene with the whisper campaign.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just thought that was a neat little story. Sardi's is a real place where like the Broadway people would go and hang out and do stuff after the shows or whatever. But yeah, and I also thought it was neat because it reminded me as we were watching, there's in Glow, if you've seen Glow on Netflix, and like I think it's like the second season or something, it's like Bash, the producer guy, and Betty Gilpin, like they are talking about the show, and they even, I think I forget which one says it, but it's like, let's start a whisper campaign like in Muppets Take Manhattan or something like that.
That's great. Well, going back to that wedding sequence, though, because we were done talking about the filming of it, but I think you also have to mention the song. Like, you can't talk about the wedding sequence without the song, or two songs, actually, because there's a medley of Somebody's Getting Married and He'll Make Me Happy, which is sung by Miss Piggy. Now, these songs, like all of the songs for the film, were written by Sesame Street alum, a guy named Jeff Moss. The film score was arranged by Broadway veteran Ralph Burns, and that actually got the film its sole Oscar nomination. The score did, which it lost to Purple Rain, unfortunately. What I mean, but if you're going to lose,
I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
what a way
like,
to go.
yeah.
I don't know if just like really great songwriters are just drawn to Muppet stuff or what the deal is, but it's like the music just keeps winning. Like it just
I mean, the music in
They-
this is fantastic.
they all have good songs.
Mhm.
And again, just like on Caper, when this one came on and I started hearing the music, like it all came back to it
Yeah.
washed back over me, like it was just like I remember all of this music. The stuff with like Ralph Burns, I said that the big reason he wanted him, besides being like a Broadway guy, just in general, was just like he said his stuff made him feel New York. Like he just said, like his stuff just was very New York style or something, and so like he just thought it was perfect for this.
Yeah, it works really well. And Jeff Moss, he had been a Captain Kangaroo guy alongside with John Stone. Remember we talked about that way back in episode 2 of this series. He had worked on Sesame Street since the show's inception and was probably responsible for as many of the series' most memorable songs as Joe Raposo was. Like The People in Your Neighborhood, I Love Trash, Rubber Ducky. Like Jeff Moss wrote all those.
Jeff Moss wasn't just some dude with a piano. The guy was dropping bangers before you were potty trained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote I Love Trash, and I still hum it when I open old emails from my exes. Rubber Ducky was a cultural reset
love,
for me.
Oh, yeah.
love Rubber Ducky.
Yeah, he could weaponize childhood joy. This guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's good. I mean, I didn't realize. I thought Joe Raposo was kind of like the point man on all of those early Sesame Street songs, but like Jeff Moss, I mean, just those 3 that I just named, those are 3 of the most iconic Sesame Street songs that there are. And that have been used over and over and over throughout the years. Now, in addition to the opener, Together Again, great opening song, and of course the tearjerker, Saying Goodbye, one of the film's most memorable songs took place during a dream sequence that would have lasting consequences for the Muppets. The song I'm Gonna Always Love You is performed during a fantasy sequence in which Miss Piggy imagines her, Kermit, and several of the other Muppets as baby versions of themselves. Now,
This song is fucking great. By the way,
it's so good. It's
yeah.
it's my favorite song in the movie, probably.
It's
And
just
I mean,
so
this whole
fun.
sequence is one of my favorite things about this whole movie. And it is just it's delightful. I love the design of the baby Muppets. I think there's something about that scene. I could just watch the scene as like a standalone scene and be perfectly happy. I think it's really great. There's something really appealing about the way they reimagined the Muppets as baby versions of themselves, that I don't like, or Kermit having like his eyes are bigger, or his eyes are like the same size as they are when he's full size Kermit, but on a smaller body. And I don't know, it's very cute, but this was one of the toughest sequences to film in the entire movie. Pulling it off required a combination of marionettes, radio controlled characters, and specifically designed baby Muppets with short, stubby arms and legs, which made them very difficult to operate. But the end result, I think, is one of the most memorable Muppet moments yet in any of these movies that we've talked about, and one that would later take on a life of its own. Now, I did find a pretty interesting artifact about this song during my research. I sent this to you guys like yesterday, I think it was, when I found it. So after the movie came out, Jim Henson directed a music video for this song, the song that's in the Muppet Baby sequence, with the intention of it airing on MTV. Now, the song it's a slightly remixed version of the one from the film. It's almost the same, but there are some subtle differences. And the music video that Jim shot, combined some footage from the movie with new footage that he filmed specifically for the video, which parodied some of the popular music videos that were airing on MTV at the time. Like the style of the video is sort of edited with these like effects like you would expect from like a early to mid 1980s MTV video. And the new footage includes a real frog. There's a real frog in it. His name was Vito. And a real pearl-wearing pig. Her name was Dorothy Pig Newton because she ate a lot of Fig Newtons on set. She apparently ate 3 full boxes of Fig Newtons during the filming of this. Jim Henson himself makes a cameo appearance in the video. He wears these like Devo-style glasses, kind of like the thin like Geordie LaForge style like sunglasses.
Oh yeah,
and big oversized Kermit feet. He pops up towards the end of the video, but you can find it on YouTube pretty easily. I might post it to some social media stuff, but just Google "I'm Gonna Always Love You" MTV. I think is how I found it. And it's got the MTV logo on it and everything, like the music video. But it is a very fun little weird artifact that I was able to find during my research on this that I had no idea existed, honestly, because I'd never seen it before. But it's fun. And the song is just such a blast. And so you can understand why the combination of that song, which is so great, and these Muppet puppets, the baby puppets, the design of them, you could see how that would have a lot of appeal. So as the film's opening date neared, the marketing team went into kind of overdrive. You know, they were doing a lot of toys, obviously. They were fielding calls from merchandising offers from, Frito-Lay's, McDonald's wanted to do Happy Meals, General Mills wanted to have them on cereal boxes, and one of the more surprising ones was Oral-B. Oral-B contacted them wanting to create a line of Muppet toothbrushes featuring the Muppet Babies, and I actually had those toothbrushes. I did not remember having them until I started looking into this. And I specifically remember having Muppet toothbrushes around this time.
wow.
Yeah. So, but another one of the most surprising offers they got was from Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble wanted to use the Muppet Babies to help sell Pampers diapers. Now, Jim at first was like, so you want babies to take a shit on my name? he said that jokingly, but he did actually say that. But it kind of showed the appeal that these characters were having. Like people really latched onto these baby versions of these characters even before the movie came out, because this stuff was all happening like before the movie was even released, because people were getting previews of it, obviously.
Yeah.
But the place where the Muppet Babies would be the most successful was on Saturday mornings in the form of a weekly cartoon. Now, Jim had long avoided the Saturday morning cartoon market, but he eventually came around on it, figuring, hey, if kids are going to be watching TV on Saturday mornings anyway, the Muppets might as well be there. We might as well have a presence and get those views. So when he was approached by executives from Marvel Productions, and yes, that's like Marvel Comics, that was their cartoon production side, about developing an animated series for CBS that would center on the Muppet Babies, he was willing to hear them out. But, Jim doesn't just make anything just for like the money. So if he was going to have a Muppet Babies cartoon, he wanted there to be kind of like a reason for it to exist. Like, what's our goal here? And his goal for the Muppet Babies was to teach kids creativity. I actually got a really good quote from him about this, where he said, "There's almost no teaching of creativity that I know of. We can show the Muppet Babies using their individual creativity and how each one can do the same thing differently. There is no right or wrong to it."
Mm-hmm.
Translation is, let's show children that creativity is messy, beautiful, chaotic magic.
Yeah,
Not
basically
everybody
that
needs
there's not one way to figure something out. Like, use your creativity to figure this out, and it might be different than your friends, right?
It's adorable considering he made a pig scream at a frog for 40 years and somehow made it romantic. That's but it really is fun because it goes all the way back to the beginning of our series. That was a big thing for him. That was one of his like core beliefs was, there's not like one way to do something. Like, find a way to work around, find another way to do it.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was cool.
So with this objective in mind, Henson signed a deal with Marvel that allowed Henson Associates to maintain quality control in the project, while most of the day-to-day work was handled by Marvel's writers and animators. So they weren't Henson Associates didn't have an animation side, so they had somebody else was going to do it, but they were involved. So with both Henson and Marvel on board, CBS committed to a budget of $250,000 per episode for the first 13 episodes, and they made it the centerpiece of their Saturday morning lineup. Michael Frith was brought on as a creative consultant, which was a title that he also had on Fraggle Rock, or really with Henson Associates in general. That was kind of his thing. And he oversaw not only the look and design of the series, but reviewed its scripts and story ideas as well. So like Henson is very much involved. They want to make sure, I mean, this is their name is on this. So they want to make sure it is adhering to like their ideals, you know?
Basically the guy who kept it from turning into like Ren and Stimpy for preschoolers.
Right.
Because let's be honest, left unsupervised, Gonzo would be strapping himself to a rocket and using a glue stick as an enema by episode 3. So like,
well, I mean, there were other shows that were inspired by the Muppet Babies, like a pup named Scooby Doo, and there was a Flintstones ones where they were kids, and they were all sort of doing this like, let's take so and so but younger, you know. But none of them had this sort of core ideal about teaching like creativity or teaching anything really at all. None of them really had any goal other than entertainment, unlike Muppet Babies, which did actually want to be like educational in a way for kids while still being very entertaining.
He's always cared about that, and that's the whole idea. The opening song is just about like make believing. Although I did see a stand-up comic go through that opening scene and talk about how dark that is. Like it's just like I forget the exact words, but it's just like, you know, when you feel like you're in a world without care. So just close your eyes and make believe.
Just go to your happy place.
Happy place. But yeah, I mean, the 80s were wild. Like a $250,000 per episode in 84 money. Like that's
a lot of money.
Cocaine fueled 80s cartoon money. Like,
but
some CBS exec was like snorting a line on a He-Man VHS and going like, give that frog fuck anything he wants.
Yeah, but it paid off for them. I mean, when the first episode of the Muppet Babies aired in September of 1984, this is just 6 months after it was greenlit, it was an immediate success, both critically and commercially. It pulled in huge ratings for CBS. It was not their highest rated Saturday morning show. It was their second highest rated, though. Number one was Pee-wee's Playhouse, deservedly so. But it was a huge hit still, and it went on to win the Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program for the first 4 years of its 8-year run. That's
Which is
deal.
wild. Yeah, that's wild. It's like a, and if you watch that show, I mean, I watched that show. Like
this show was my introduction to the Muppets. The Muppet Babies were the first Muppet thing I ever saw because 1984. I was a little too young to watch it, but it aired for 8 years, so it aired until I was 84 to what is that to 92. I was like the prime age for that because 92 I turned 10 years old, so I was like in that like elementary school like young kid. I was in the perfect age group for this. And
me too.
I watched it
great.
Every chance I got, and I loved it. And I loved the movie parodies, even though they were parodying movies that I had not seen. And
I was gonna say that's one of the interesting things about it is they would dip into like
Indiana Jones and like
I remember one. There's like where they're imagining something, and they and this came back to me as I was reading about this that like they kick open a door and it's like they're in the labyrinth or whatever, and there's wicked stuff like that.
And a lot of times they would work in like live action footage, like clips from some of the movies they were parodying. Which
that's what I'm talking about with the labyrinth. Yeah.
And that's unfortunately why you can't find Muppet Babies streaming anywhere because the rights are a mess because of the clips from those. Like the Muppet Babies are the finding those original episodes. I mean, I'm sure you can find them on YouTube and things like that, but finding an official release of them, they're not streaming anywhere. They're not like on Blu-ray or anything. Like they're very difficult to find because they're using clips of movies that obviously they had the rights to use at the time, but those rights didn't necessarily include streaming and home video and things like that. So it's a little bit difficult. You can't just go and watch Muppet Babies now. Sad. There's a new Muppet Babies show.
Yeah.
That uses little puppets, I think, right? Doesn't it use puppets?
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it. I've just seen pictures from it. I'm not really the demographic for that anymore.
Yeah,
Oh,
probably not.
bullshit. We all are. Come on.
I wonder.
We've talked
why
about
you
this
could-
throughout our entire series. We are all still in the demographic for Muppets.
Yeah, but I'm like that Muppet Baby show is like it is aimed
Clearly
at
geared for younger kids.
preschoolers.
Yeah. I don't know how. This is probably not the discussion for this show, but it just made me wonder about like fair use and stuff because it's not like they were using huge scenes. You know?
But they're still
and
somebody else's copyrighted material.
Yeah. Which is weird. Okay.
Well, when the Muppets Take Manhattan opened in the U.S. on July 13th, 1984, reviews were fine. Like, they were fine. They weren't bad. They weren't like nobody was jumping for joy over it, but they were fine. I actually really like how Brian J. Jones put it in the Jim Henson biography. He wrote, "The response from critics to the Muppets Take Manhattan was largely one of amused toleration." That's a pretty funny way to put it to me, but it's kind of true if you start reading their reviews. In his 3-star review for the Chicago Sun-Times, just because we've quoted him on, I think, every movie in this series so far, Roger Ebert seemed to be addressing Kermit the Frog directly. It's a really weird review. I read the whole thing. It's basically like him writing an open letter to Kermit. And he said, "The plot of your movie has been seen before. I doubt if that will come as news to you. The fact that this plot is not original does not deter you, Kermit, nor should it. It's still a good plot."
Because when Roger Ebert enters his Dear Kermit era, you know he's either in love or spiraling. I don't know which one, but he looked at a puppet frog and thought, he needs correspondence.
Yes.
Well, it makes me think back to that. It makes me think back to that one guy who used all those $10 words and in that one review, and Jim Henson was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah. Well, this one
I feel
at
like
least
Roger Ebert was going for like maybe he'll respond to me.
Well, I don't know that Roger Ebert thought that, but
Yeah.
I also say imagine writing cinematic love letters to a felt amphibian
But-
while ignoring like Amadeus coming out with like actual monologues. Ebert's like going, "Yeah, plot's predictable, but god damn it, Kermit, you committed. You believed in that tap dance. You live, Kermit. You live."
Yes.
I mean, you're implying that Roger Ebert did not review Amadeus, which I'm pretty sure he did.
He probably did, yeah.
He gave it a great review. Ebert's TV co-star, Gene Siskel, writing for the Chicago Tribune, called it a most enjoyable backstage musical, while Variety described it as a genuinely fun confection of old-fashioned entertainment that will appeal to both children and their parents. So, those are like pleasant reviews. Like, everyone's like, this is a pleasant little fun time. That was
he's like, it's fine. It sings. Nobody gets murdered. It's not cats.
You're not going to be bored. It's fine. On the other side of things, the New York Daily News called it strangely flat, and the Toronto Star wrote that the Muppet charm has been stretched as far as it can go. Now that the pig and the frog are blissfully wedded, it's time to lay them to rest. Which sounds like he wants to murder.
Yeah.
Miss Piggy and Kermit. It sounds like he's trying to euthanize them.
Yeah.
You don't just kill off the Muppets like they're. You don't want. First of all, you don't physically kill off the Muppets. Second of all, I don't. If he's referring to something else, you don't just kill them off like they're a sitcom that the shark. The Muppets outlived disco and Watergate. And your dumbass review column. Like, what are you talking about?
I didn't even write down the reviewer's name. I just wrote down your newspaper. I didn't even.
Kermit's not going to pasture. He's going to Broadway. God damn it. Piggy, she's going to tie your ass to your stupid fucking keyboard and drop you in the Hudson because that's what Piggy does.
So, critics at the time may have been a little bit dismissive, but Jim Henson was pretty happy with the film. He liked how it turned out, and it performed pretty well. It had cost a lot less than The Great Muppet Caper. It only cost about $8 million to that movie's $13 million, and it brought in $25 million at the box office. So not too bad, right? Now, this is another one that both of you had watched regularly as kids, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep,
along with
right.
The Great Muppet Caper. Like this one and The Great Muppet Caper were kind of the ones that both of you watched a lot, which you've both talked about in previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talked about Muppet Caper a couple of episodes ago, you both thought that it held up really well. Like you both thought it, and I don't think it was even nostalgia talking. Like you both like genuinely still really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot as well. So I'm curious about your thoughts on this one. Like, did the Muppets Take Manhattan live up to your childhood memories of it when you watched it this time?
I'll be honest, I can see the flaws in the movie. I recognize that there are some. There are weird moments, or weird pacing. And I get that, but I can't sit here and tell you that I watched this and I was at any point disappointed. I was not. I enjoyed this movie again. I thought it, and I know that it's probably a lot nostalgia, but like something felt, there's just movies that do it to you that are just like warm and cozy and they just feel like home and you can just throw them on and they're just like, you're happy. And like this movie, I'm glad that I bought the 4K. Like, I'm like, oh God, I just want to throw this on sometimes. Like, I love this fucking movie. Like, the music is still amazing. All the songs, like I talked about earlier, came flooding back to me, like as they did them. And there are just there's some really good scenes in it. I think the people's speech still like stuck
Great.
out to
Yeah.
me for some reason. Like I still loved that. There were scenes that like for some reason jarred in my brain, like Fozzie being in the cave with the bears, like hibernating. Like all of a sudden that like came flooding back to me, like as it was happening, and like she wanted to snuggle and like stuff like that. And the park stuff was great. For some reason, I really like them in New York City. Like I just love the feel of them walking around on the street and
Yeah, there's something
doing
about
stuff.
them being like on a real place that like you recognize from other movies and things like that. Like you see this as a real place as opposed to, even Great Muppet Caper, which used some real locations, or Muppet Movie, which used some real locations, but they weren't like recognizable locations. Like they're clearly in Manhattan. Like they're in Midtown Manhattan, and there's something sort of like magical about seeing them walk around there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's just wild. Like the scenes where they, Oz talked about them being on dollies on their back, like holding the puppets up, to like to show the scenes where they're walking down the street. But like the fact that the background's going on and all that stuff, it was like one thing to see like Kermit, and it still is like Kermit pedaling his bike down that road that looks like it's in a smaller town that's like in a country town or whatever. And or even when they're in the park all on bikes and stuff. But I loved like them just walking down the street like talking, and there's shit in the background, like people, like it's like New York is still happening and the Muppets are still just like walking around and interacting, and it's just, that stuff's neat to me. I don't know why I love the diner so much. I just think the diner feels like a cool spot. And like
I love the design of the diner. Like there's something about the feel of that like greasy spoon style diner that I feel like, I think that one was shot on probably a sound stage, but the production design there is pretty fantastic. Like there's a lot of little details in the background, signs and things like that for like the daily specials, and I know it feels lived in, and it feels
very authentic. Feels very authentic.
Just I don't know, all of it. I think overall, like I still really really like the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. Maybe it's in third place out of all of the Muppet movies so far, but it's still like, that's still pretty good. Like I still just really like the Muppet movies. So I don't have like a huge problem with it. It's just so for me, I'm happy I got to see it again, and I want to watch it more times before I die eventually.
All of these things are really good. The scene with Joan Rivers, the park stuff, the stuff in the diner, the celebrity cameos. They all feel like really great parts that maybe would have even been good as standalone bits in something like the Muppet Show. But I do see where this is not the strongest Muppet movie, and I'm having trouble pinpointing why. I even was starting to look at some of the music. While the music is great, some of those songs in those first two Muppet movies are clearly kind of the thesis for a particular character, like Rainbow Connection, for Kermit, and and other characters get their own song, and we do get a little bit of that here, especially Piggy. In fact, I think Piggy's song in this movie is more important for her character than the one in the Muppet movie. I'm drawing a blank on the title of that song. Rolf singing "You Can't Take No for an Answer," but I don't know that that's really a Rolf song. It's just Rolf is kind
It's a
of
Dr.
leading.
Teeth song.
Yeah, it's a Dr. Teeth song, not Rolf.
Oh, I thought Rolf was singing that.
No, it's Dr. Teeth.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes more sense then. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I felt a connection with a particular song to a particular character so much, except for the Piggy one. Um, I don't know. It all comes back to like, there's a lot of really, really great parts to this. And Justin, you even pointed out, like, there weren't a lot of big artistic or innovative advancements in this, save for the Waldo, which the Waldo is cool as fuck. But like, other than that, it has great parts, but I don't know that I would call it a great movie. Does that make sense? It's definitely third place. I'm absolutely right with Gary. I think this is third place. I'm trying not to let nostalgia color my critical eye towards I still love the movie, but I don't know that I'd ever examined it with a critical eye like we do for the show here, and I think it falls in third place.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that nostalgic connection to it because this is not one that I watched very much when I was a kid. I remember the broad strokes from it, the amnesia thing, the Muppet Babies, or,
Yeah.
the wedding, obviously. But I didn't watch it a lot, so I don't really have that nostalgic connection to it. And I do like it. I like a lot about it, but I do think of the trio of Muppet movies that Jim Henson was directly involved with, I think this is the weakest one. And I think, Todd, you said you were having a hard time putting your kind of finger on what it was exactly that it was missing.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because it's missing the anarchy that makes the Muppets so special.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of Muppet Show. As we've been doing this series, I've been watching my way through all of the Muppet Show. And I think that the first Muppet movie is the only one to fully capture that element of the characters, which had been so integral to the Muppet Show. Caper lost it a little bit, but there was still enough there. And honestly, that one has enough great jokes and gags to make up for it. And this one's funny enough. It's pleasant. It's got a lot of heart. But I think when Frank Oz rewrote the script to make it less jokey, I think he lost an aspect of the Muppets that had made them so endearing to begin with. Like, he wanted to get the heart there, but the thing about the Muppets is it's not just the heart of the characters. It's also this chaotic element. There's this chaotic element to the best Muppet projects that this one is missing. This one's just maybe a little bit too polished, I guess you would say, or the way that the Muppets themselves are portrayed are a little too polished. I think the Muppet movie is the one that best combines the heart of the Muppets with the chaotic anarchy of the Muppets. I think Muppet Caper loses a little bit of the heart, but still has enough like silly jokes and stuff to where it still feels like it still captures the Muppets in a way that this one loses, because this one focuses so much on them as like sweet little cute characters that it's missing a lot of that. It's missing like the insanity of something like the Happiness Hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one, for I guess the best way to say it is that this one, unlike the previous movies, really starts to lean into being children's entertainment. Like, it's not quite there. It's not quite there, but I think this is when the Muppets transition to children's entertainment really began. Because it is so, like, it has such a focus on being sweet. Without
that's
that
fair.
other stuff that gave the Muppets a little bit of an edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is something about like Oz talks about with this one. You could hear it on top of the other stuff where he talks about like how he got rid of a lot of the insanity or whatever, but he talks about too like how hard things are for the Muppets, and he's like, but that's important because the Muppets overcome this stuff. the Muppets show you that you could, the Muppets all face obstacles and they get over them, and uh, so I see where his head's at, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Like he finds value in the Muppets as like important, like trying to prove that they're also like it's more to them than just like some silly show or something. It's like they've got real relationships, they overcome obstacles, they succeed, and
Yeah.
like there's it like all the heart what we're
But it
talking
can be
about.
both. It can be
But
both.
it can be both.
And
Yeah.
the first Muppet movie proved that it could be both.
It feels like everybody tries to keep like they want to make it a real movie, too. It feels like part of it. So they give it like what Ebert called like that standard plot, like
Yeah.
basically like, and so it's like we're gonna make this like we're gonna put them in a real scenario. So you miss out when you do that of like just the random batshit stuff.
Yeah,
So-
weird sight gags like the fork in the road, or just like
right.
things that are a big part of what the Muppets are. It feels like this one just they get softened just a little bit too much, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the beginning of that happening, because I feel like they and even though I think there are better Muppet movies after this one. I think Muppet Caper and the 2011 Muppets are both better movies than this one. But Muppet Caper doesn't really have a lot of that. Or I'm sorry, Muppet Christmas Carol, excuse me. Muppet Christmas Carol doesn't really have a lot of that. I think it's a better movie than this overall, but it is a softer version of the Muppets than what debuted on the Muppet Show in the 70s.
You know what's funny is
they've become kid friendly without they've almost started catering to a younger audience, which Jim Henson never intended.
it sounds so weird to think about, but like the that unhinged element that the Muppets have, I haven't seen the newer movies. So honestly, past like Christmas Carol or something, I don't know. I don't know what I've seen. I didn't see 2011, and
2011's really good.
It's great.
and
actually.
it might be, yeah. So because I'm thinking like there's a lot of creators now that it feels like would have pulled a lot from all of this, and they would probably be very good at like directing a Muppets movie. Like if you think about people like one of the first ones that comes to mind directly, like a Dan Harmon or something who did Community or Rick and Morty or something like that. Those people like that would.
Well, I mean, the one thing
probably
I
do
think that
great.
makes the 2011 one so good is that the music is done by Brett McKenzie of Flight of the Conchords, which what a great
and he's that's
what a
great.
great
That sounds
combination.
awesome.
And they sound like Flight of the Conchords songs, but the Paul Williams stuff sounds like Paul Williams stuff, And speaking of that, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being too negative, because I do really like this movie. I'm just being honest about the weaknesses that I see, especially watching it immediately on the heels of the other Muppet movies. But
I was watching the movie, and when Kermit gets hit by a car and he loses his memory, I was like, wow, this is a weird spot for this to happen.
Right.
It was like you're already like barreling towards the finale, and now you just introduced the
It
new
feels
plot.
like it happens really late. That's what I was talking about, how the plot like has a weird rhythm to it. Like it feels, I don't know, it's odd. But I mean, there are so many elements that I do really like. I just think, like Todd was saying, the great parts don't lead to a great whole. They lead to a okay whole.
Yeah.
But like there are things that I really like. The whole Gil and Jill, like the frogs, crack me up. Them going, which is an homage to Jim Henson, who was known to do that during like story meetings and stuff. That was like, if Jim it could mean a couple different things depending on the tone of his but that was an homage to him for sure. Frank Oz is in that scene, by the way. He's in the boardroom scene with the soap company. You can see him in the background as a little cameo.
But you know what's funny about that too is that in the commentary when that scene's on, like Frank Oz, this is, I guess, kind of goes to like how we're picturing all of this must have gone. He's like in the commentary, like this whole part, like I almost tried to remove it because I was kind of like, this is going to be So stupid.
I think it's so
And
funny
he's like,
though.
and I'm watching it back now, and it is stupid.
It is stupid, but that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
Like, what do you have, Jill? Something from the grill, Bill? Like it's a bunch of silly wordplay, but that's what the Muppets do, you know? And I think it's great. And I think Kermit playing the different characters is great. I love the one with the mustache that he goes into Sardi's. I really love the Afro version.
Buffo.
Yeah, he's
Sacco.
he's so
Buffalo,
funny.
Sacco
He's so funny in this. And Jim, of course, had a lot of fun playing those because he got to play Kermit as like different versions of Kermit. I also really liked Amnesia Kermit. I like the way he changed his voice a little bit for that, like the way that the rhythm of his voice, the
record was at a slower.
Yeah, I think it's really funny. I think it's great. But my favorite thing about this one, honestly, is the music. I think this is actually in disagreement with a comment that you made, Todd, but I think the music in this is better than in the Muppet Caper. And I like the music a lot in the Muppet Caper. I know that you guys both love the music in that movie, and I like it a lot too. I think Gary, you in particular, really talked about how much you like the music in that one. And Joe Raposo's song, Joe Raposo is incredible, and his songs are fantastic. But I honestly think that Moss's songs here are even better than those. Like, I think Together Again and the two songs at the wedding are some of the best songs in any of the Muppet movies. Just as like pure songs, like they're great. And Saying Goodbye, Saying Goodbye is an incredible song.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Right Where I Belong, like that. Oh my God, that song.
Well, you got a lot of heart, Justin. I'm a sucker for like song, like people who can just fucking kill it with a hook, or like just poppy, and so Caper had a lot of that. Like,
well,
this
I think
movie,
these have
like,
a lot of that.
I was gonna say I Will Always Love You is just like the catchiest. It might be the catchiest song they've had.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite song in the movie. The Dr. Teeth song is a banger. You can't take no for an answer. The one we're talking about, it's so catchy. But I'm Gonna Always Love You, the one in the Muppet Babies sequence, is, I think it's such a catchy song. Like, not even as a Muppet song, like it's just a catchy song. Like that's why Jim Henson made a MTV music video for it, you know?
Yeah.
I love everything about it. And if I'm being honest, I think that some of these songs actually give Paul Williams stuff from the first one a run for its money, and that's saying something. I don't think anything's as good as Rainbow Connection.
So that's high praise, but yeah, I was gonna say,
but they're on par, or at least close to it. Like, I think the songs in this are wonderful, and I think the songs are good enough to make the whole movie worth watching. But because the main thing that I think is weak about this movie is the structure. It's really weird, and it wraps up like that. Like, we just have a wedding and then the credits roll. It's really strange.
It is a weird ending.
Yeah.
And I think that I wish that it was a little weirder. Like, I wish it was a little edgier and a little weirder, because I think that's what I love most about the early Muppet stuff.
Yeah.
Like, watching the Muppet Show, like, I just watched the Gilda Radner episode, and there's this gag where she had written a note to Kermit that she wanted a 7-foot-tall parrot in this operetto sequence she was doing, and Kermit misread her handwriting and got a 7-foot-tall carrot. So then during this sequence, there is a giant Muppet that is just a big carrot with a mouth and eyeballs, and it's so stupid and so fucking weird. But that is kind of like what I love about the Muppets, is that they would find these weird jokes and just roll with it. Yeah. And this one feels like it's playing it a little safe.
Yeah.
It does. Also, this is a dumb thing to point out maybe, but I also feel like the other world, the worlds of the other movies feel like Muppets exist in them just as a natural thing. And in New York, in this one, it's like they're the Muppets.
It's just them. Because in Muppet Caper, like, when they get a cab, it's Beauregard who picks them up. Another Muppet who is not part of their crew.
Right.
You know? So,
and like the whole Muppet movie is running up on other Muppets.
Yeah, just randomly, like, we go to a car dealership and Sweetums is working there, you know?
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, I kind of dig that idea, like, of that world existing where they're all just like randomly scattered about, just like
Right.
anybody else, you know?
Mhm.
I kind of feel like with the Muppet movie, it's not long after we're introduced to Kermit that he picks up Fozzie, and from there it goes to buddy comedy really quick into this ensemble. And even with Great Muppet Caper, it's largely at its core, it's Kermit, Gonzo, and Fozzie. And with this, like the other Muppets fuck off pretty soon.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the stuff that they're doing, yeah, they write letters, but it's kind of inconsequential. It's never really addressed. Oh, and then
I agree with
and then
that.
they're just back. And it's kind of like it just doesn't jive with
It's like them running off just gives them an excuse to do these quick little vignettes, and they're
Yeah.
good. Like the Gonzo on the water skis is great.
Yeah.
Scooter and Swedish Chef working in the movie theater is great. And Rolf working at a dog,
very funny.
it's really funny. Like
Yeah,
at a
again,
kennel.
great parts,
But
but
then they're just like, we're just gonna write them letters and tell them to come back, and then everyone comes back, and that's like
Yeah.
it. It's like, why
Yeah.
were they gone to begin with? You know,
Yeah,
like why?
yeah.
Other
because
than
like if you edit those out,
it doesn't change the movie at all.
it doesn't change the movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is weird. I agree with that. That like part of what I love is the relationships like that, like Kermit and Fozzie.
Mhm.
So Frank Oz, like getting really into the heart of it, was more about like Kermit, but
Kermit and
yeah,
Piggy more than anything.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then Piggy, if anything, and then the other folks. Like, I'm just saying, I'm like, I want the spinoff where like who was Janice talking to that was gonna try to get her to pose nude, and why didn't that happen? And
I was gonna say like because I had forgotten about her line in this movie, and as soon as it came back, I came off the couch of just like
Well, she has a similar gag in Muppet Caper.
in Muppet
where-
Caper, yeah.
in
but
the
I
Happiness
I
Hotel.
couldn't remember this one. It was just kind of yeah, because it just hit me. It hit me anew watching it this time. Yeah.
All right, so during my research for this episode, I found another weird little tidbit that I was either unaware of or had completely forgotten about. But it turns out that back in 2019, there was talks of continuing the story of the Muppets Take Manhattan as a Disney Plus TV series. Now, the creators of the TV show Once Upon a Time, remember that show that came on
Oh, yeah.
ABC? I never really watched it, but I remember it.
It's really fun. It's a good show.
So the guys who ran it, they were developing a show with Josh Gad, who, Olaf from Frozen, Josh Gad. They were developing a show with Josh Gad called The Muppets Live Another Day, which sounds like the Muppets doing a James Bond movie. For
I
some
was gonna
reason.
say, yeah.
That's what it sounds like. But
Also another movie I'd like to see. Kurt, go ahead and add that to the list.
a Muppet James Bond movie?
Yes,
Oh, that would be
absolutely.
great. Yes, yeah. Which Bond?
Oh man, I feel like it's got to be one of the sillier ones. I feel like
Roger
Moore.
Moore
had
Yeah.
some.
yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say 100% it's Roger Moore. This
Yeah,
is not a
it's-
discussion.
Yeah.
Roger Moore would
The-
work perfectly with
but then
Muppets.
there's
those are
that-
the goofiest ones.
true. But then there's that adage of like the more serious you take something, the funnier it is. So part of me wants, and I, having seen Daniel Craig on SNL, I'm like, I wonder how he would do
He's
with
got
the Muppets. Like
Great
he's-
comedic timing.
Yeah. So
Have you
part of
seen
me wants
Logan
to see
Lucky?
Daniel Craig. Did I see? No, I saw Layer Cake.
Layer Cake's
and
great.
what's the one where he's what's the one where he's trying to they break or they get him out of prison to break into
The
to do another.
Racetrack?
Yeah,
That's Logan Lucky.
Oh, it is. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Then yes, I'm sorry. I for some reason I
Adam
was thinking
Driver?
that was something else. But yes, I have seen it. It's hysterical.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah.
Oh, anyway, sorry. So this new Muppet series, The Muppets Live Another Day, it was to take place not long after the events of The Muppets Take Manhattan in 1984. So it was going to be like a period piece set in 1984, right
it.
after the movie.
Yeah.
And the Muppets would have, for some reason, been disbanded after the Broadway show, but they would have to join back together after the mysterious disappearance of Rolf. So sounds like a great show. It ended up getting scrapped because there were some executive changes at the Muppet Studio. So it ended up kind of being a victim of that, but it sounds like it could have been pretty cool to me. Like that sounds great.
I'd tune in for that. That sounds
Yeah,
pretty
100%.
pretty
Oh,
interesting.
I love the idea, and especially a period piece. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just during the 80s. Like
Yeah.
it's that's wicked. You know what's funny too, just as another side note, the Muppets Take Manhattan came out in the summer of '84, so it was up against movies like Gremlins and
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And in fact, like films, you know, this is I think we've probably discussed this before, but this is where like things had happened with like violence and everything else at the MPAA. Like they all started figuring out PG-13 during this time. Red Dawn, I think, was another one that was released in like August of '84. But a month before that, there was an interview I found with Jim Henson where he's talking to Gene Shalit, and they ask him about how these movies are coming out, and it's like, you know, here you are with this G-rated movie. Like, what's this about? And I found this quote from him. I thought that was really good. He says, you know, it's a strange and sort of sad thing that the G rating seems to be thought of as a negative. I've always felt that people should be able to do a film that works for your whole family, and it doesn't have to have any kind of violence or sex, and you could still make it really, really entertaining. I don't know. I just felt like I don't think he was like on a mission or anything, but I think he was just also like, why does that have to be a question? You
Yeah,
know,
right.
like, and you know, like, why can't I still make a good movie and I don't do what all those others are doing?
Yeah, it could be a G-rated movie and still be good and not just be like dumbed down kids entertainment. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to be honest,
those
that's
do exist.
and to be honest, that's a great question coming from someone who is themselves a Muppet.
Have you actually seen the Muppet of Gene Shalit?
I
No,
was
there is
totally
one.
joking, but no, I
Oh, it
haven't.
was used on the Muppet Sex and Violence on that pilot. I think it was on that one. It was on one of the pilots, those early pilots of the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
There is a Muppet of Gene Shalit.
That's funny.
That and if you can search on Google and you can actually find a picture of Gene Shalit posing with the Muppet of him. It's great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun. I mean, it looks just like him. It's great.
I love that.
Well, the Muppets Take Manhattan was not as successful as some previous Muppet projects had been, but it still proved that there was still plenty of gas in the tank for the ragtag crew of Muppets that we've come to love. But Henson was already working on his next big project, that little fantasy film with Brian Froud that we mentioned earlier, that little throwaway mentioned earlier, you know. But before he really was able to dive into that too much further, he had a deal to settle. And it was, in fact, the biggest deal of his career. So you guys remember this guy we talked about, Robert Holmes Accord, the Australian businessman who'd taken over Lord Lou Grade's company. Talked about that in our Dark Crystal episode, our last episode. Well, Jim had successfully wrangled the Dark Crystal away from him, but the fact remained that with his acquisition of ACC, Holmes Accord now legally owned the first two Muppet movies because they had produced those, along with several Muppet-related TV specials and all 120 episodes of The Muppet Show. Now, getting these properties out of Holmes Accord's hand was going to be a pretty difficult task. He'd been happy to get rid of the Dark Crystal and wash his hands of all that because it seemed like a mess from the get-go. But with The Muppet Show in syndication, it was a pretty steady revenue stream. So he wasn't just going to give these up without a fight. And what's worse, Holmes Accord, his ownership of the Muppet Show in those first two Muppet movies also gave him 10% of any Muppet merchandising. So he's like, you know, he's raking in the dollars. Now,
But every time the man who invented Kermit the Frog has to, and the pig and the fucking Swedish chef, he's got to Venmo a guy in Australia every time somebody buys a backpack at Target or something. It's like,
yeah, I mean, Jim still owned the characters. You know, like he had the rights to the characters. He never sold those. So I don't know exactly how, you know, maybe it was because they were directly tied into the Muppet Show or the Muppet movies, any of that merchandising. But like Kermit the Frog was still Jim's. You know, Rolf, Miss Piggy, those were still Jim's. He still owned those outright. It was just the things that they were connected to, kind of thing. It's you know, complicated legal shit. But he was determined to get his show and his movies back. Like he wanted to own those. Remember, he had told Bernie Brillstein years ago, never sell anything that I own. Remember when he attempted to do that?
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so now Jim without wanting to, found himself in a position where something that he created was owned by somebody else. So he has this goal to get all of his stuff back, and him and Holmes Accord, they went back and forth on this for the better part of a year. And like Holmes Accord is throwing out numbers that are ridiculous. Like you can have it back for this many millions of dollars, like just really ridiculous sums. But finally, in August of 1984, this is after weeks of negotiation, Jim and Holmes Accord reached a deal where Jim would buy back all of his Muppet properties for $6.5 million. Now, that's a lot of money, even especially in 1984 money. $6.5 million is a lot of money, but just as he had with the Dark Crystal, Jim saw the value in owning the Muppets himself. Had he not made the deal, honestly, the Henson Company would probably eventually have ceased to exist. Like, I don't think the Henson Company that exists today would not be around if he hadn't made this deal.
Yeah.
So with that deal out of the way, Jim began to really focus on his next project. We're back to that little fantasy film we keep referencing. And everyone who's listening to this knows what it is. A movie that would unfortunately be the last feature-length project that Jim himself would direct, and one that is, at least in my opinion, one of his greatest achievements. We are talking, of course, about the subject of our next episode, Labyrinth. I'm so excited to talk about Labyrinth because I love it. I adore this movie.
I think we're going to go in, and I feel sorry for everybody that doesn't want us to talk a long time because I don't know how we're not going to on the Labyrinth. So I apologize ahead of time. I just feel like, I mean, with the Muppets thing, like, I'm glad that Jim Henson was committed to this. I'm glad that he was in the position to do this. Because I was just looking myself just to see, but like, I mean, that amount of money is we're talking like $20 million, now.
Yeah.
And so it's a big chunk of change, but he was willing to invest it because he knew like you could drop a nuke on the Muppets and Gonzo's gonna come crawling out like a goddamn cockroach or something. But it's like the Muppets they're eternal. I feel like they really are. Like I don't think you're ever gonna fully ever get rid of them. So it's like a lifelong investment that makes sense.
And I mean, obviously, Jim's not going to own them forever. There's a deal with Disney a few years down the line. Although the final sale of the Muppets to Disney came decades after Jim passed away. But the time of his passing, he was actually working on a deal with Disney. But also, when Disney bought the Muppets, this is like 2004, I think is when Disney bought the Muppets. They bought them for like $75 million. So it's not like Marvel acquisition kind of money, but that's a chunk of money.
Yeah, that's a yes.
For something
he did okay for his family.
Yes, exactly. It secured the futures of his family and his children. I mean, his family's very successful, and they all are still. Well, most of them are still involved in the Muppets in some way, except for John, who passed away. But like Lisa and like Cheryl, like they're all. I mean, Lisa went on to be a movie producer, not just for Henson related movies. Like she worked for, I can't remember who it was, Warner Brothers or like some big studio. She went to be a studio executive with. But Brian Henson obviously is the most involved as far as like the movies because he directs. The Christmas Carol. Anyway, we're getting close to the end of the series. One or two more episodes and we'll be done. So that's all we got for this week. You guys want to let our listeners know where you can be found on the internet?
I am at This Is Gary Horn, all spelled out. I work for the National Wrestling Alliance, and you can access their links in their bio on Instagram and everywhere else. It's at NWA is that. Yeah, if you care about wrestling.
So on May 3rd, my show D's 20 will host a session of Dungeons and Dragons to raise money for the Julie Valentine Center. They provide free confidential services and resources to victims of sexual assault here in Greenville. And there will be a meet and greet with the players from 5 to 6:30. The adventure will start at 7, and the after party will be at Society in downtown Greenville. And you can find links to info and tickets on our Instagram at D's20Live.
And I am at Justin_Bishop on all the social media. And you can find the show at cinema_shock or at cinemashock.net. And head to cinemashock.net/plus to join our members only site where you can get exclusive access to extended episodes, video content, and merchandise discounts, and all kinds of other stuff that we're throwing out there. And until next time,
may the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
Now, listen carefully. You are Johnny, and you love the keys. You want to marry the keys. You want to have children with the keys.
Not the word.
Wait till I tell the guys at the office in marketing. Am I supposed to go hog wild?
Hashtag sex has me straight.